Hello, folks. Welcome to Never in the Back Foot. Tonight is probably like the first episode of 2025. I thought we would meet on a happier occasion. Anshul's smile suggests otherwise because, Australia probably clinched one of the most clinical wins, versus India in this fifth test. They won the series 3-1. And yeah, I think as Indian fans, there's probably three Indian fans who are probably going to cry as the session goes on. We have Naman joining us from the airport, giving us his precious time to just put this match in perspective. We have Anshul and Rishabh as well, joining us so we could probably rant and just talk about this match and just, get our thoughts straight. So yeah, guys, I'll just cut to the chase. I'll ask Anshul this because obviously, bragging rights तो उन्हीं के पास है. Context, people can go back and watch the preview where Anshul did predict probably India not winning even one test, but Australia winning the series either way. So, Anshul, the first question is for you. Now, Australia has registered this comprehensive win. Obviously, you're very happy. But yeah, your first thoughts to just get started with this series triumph?
Yeah, I hear a lot of people saying that this is literally one of the best series that they have ever witnessed. And I actually second their thoughts because at every point of time during the series, you could not predict that, okay, one team is clearly in front of the other team. It was a roller coaster ride to begin with, starting from that Perth test where India demolished Australia with, I think the win margin was somewhere around about 300 runs, and to be losing by that big a margin at home is always going to be like a demoralizing factor. But the way the lads came back after Perth, I think it just shows the kind of characters that we've got in the team.
Yeah, and Ujjwal straight up telling Anshul bhai जर्सी मत पहनो already trauma हो चुका है.
Yeah,
But
it's just an addition, Ujjwal. I
absolutely. And
mean,
I think as
I,
the discussion flows by, you will probably have a change in background as well. But yeah. But I'll also get Naman and Rishabh's thoughts. Let's start with Naman. I think, we spoke during the preview as well. There were so many expectations. Obviously, India was going through like this whole period of, looking at possible changes and everything. But this series was still going to be an imperative one for so many players. Yet it's been quite that roller coaster, right? Again, your first thoughts as an Indian fan after this fifth test?
Um, Disappointed at the outcome, to be very honest, of course, as all of us would be. But then again, it's not something that was very unprecedented. We probably, like I mentioned at the preview as well, I see it going 3-1. Probably didn't win the game that we thought, but won the game that we didn't think we would. So the outline, the scoreline remains that what I thought. So not very like we say, not disappointed, but not surprised. Disappointed specifically at a few players, which we will eventually talk about. But again, the way things were while heading into the series, losing 3-0 at home to New Zealand, so obviously the morale was down. Winning Perth was a major boost. But then beyond that, things like I think the Aussie unit also just got together. First game they probably lost, and then the way they rejuvenated. Kudos to Pat Cummins, the kind of leader he is, and then the way they fought back into the series, winning the ping ball game, and then the draw at Gabba was very exciting. I mean, that one could have swung either ways had the weather been better. But then the last two games, well, those are the ones where we thought that India has the best chance. But unfortunately, it was not to be so. So yeah, again, disappointed, not surprised. Saw it coming somewhat. Would have liked us to be two all each. But then yeah, that's how things are right now.
Yeah, it's been quite the tough pill to swallow. But Rishabh, I'll also ask you for your thoughts. I mean, how have you been processing the loss? It's been 45 days of riveting cricket, five tests, just so many things happening. But yeah, your first thoughts again?
Yeah, I mean, like Naman pointed out, disappointed but not surprising, primarily because it truly was, like Anshul said, a roller coaster ride, and where you saw, momentum swinging from one side to another. It never ever seemed like, I mean, even though the outcome is 3-1, it wasn't the case that Australia was steamrolled India in any way, shape, or form, or that India was out of it in many of those test matches. But I think it sort of boiled down to the way how Australia has displayed quite a bit of team spirit and unity after the first test debacle, and then how Team India, I think, could not sort of capitalize on the momentum that they garnered from the first test. And obviously with the also with very questionable team selections and tactics from the Indian team, and were and then being heavily reliant on individual brilliance from the likes of Jasprit Bumrah, which we will definitely talk about. So those became deciding factors. I really thought, I was, as I was telling you, Neha, before we started, that I really thought Melbourne was some if Melbourne really looked a close contest, it really could have gone either way. But once it sort of went towards Australia, the final test, I had a bad feeling almost that it might not, that I think this is not going well. And then all the drama that happened few days prior to the Sydney test, again, as a subject of discussion, it's just sort of dissipated a lot of anticipation and sort of, hope that could we save this test series? Well, not to be. So it puts us in a slightly tricky situation, a difficult situation, for what's coming, what might come forward. But yeah, this was a pretty amazing test series, no doubt. But the outcome definitely disappointing for us, for Indian fans at least.
Yeah, I think the one point that we all can agree on that it was a well contested series. Although the scoreline might read, heavily in favor of Australia, a win they will savor. They're winning a Border-Gavaskar Trophy after what, a good 10 years, and all of that. You're just putting all of that in perspective. It's a special win for Australia, and as much as Indian fans are crying over India losing, I think it's also important to talk about how Australia just was the better side. But I'll talk about this aspect, like you mentioned about the tabloids and, the media just coming up with so many rumors and reports of there being a lot of unrest in the Indian team and, possible changes, the whole Rohit Sharma aspect and all of that. So, Naman, I think I'll direct this one to you. Now, obviously, Rohit Sharma, till the test, till he gave us some clarity, it was like, was he dropped? Did he opt out? Was he rested? And all of that whole conjecture. So, what did you make of it? Like, Rohit Sharma not playing in this match, did it actually work well for India? Because it's not like Shubman Gill came and did something miraculous, but then do you think it was a bold call, a selfless call? Which end of the spectrum do you find yourself?
Okay, before I answer that, I'll just like to go back 3 4 months back. Back in October, when we were previewing the home season ahead of the Bangladesh and the New Zealand tests, I'd mentioned that Rohit has been a best batter over the past year or so across all the three formats. And that had actually been the case. I did not see this downfall coming, to be honest. Like the knock that he played in Kanpur, like my hometown, that was a different thing altogether. But since then, things have just gone downhill with him. I mean, he's just not known where his off stump is. The technical flaws have been there throughout. So, like, we could see that he's probably not in his zone the zone that he had found back in 2021 in the England tour. He was not in that zone anymore. So that itself raised serious question marks during the home season itself. Then, as we had discussed during the preview of the BGT itself, if KL opens and he does well, what do you do next when Rohit is coming in? And the logical thing, I mean, there were both sides to this thing, whether KL should go to the middle order or whether Rohit should play in the middle order. So, till then as well, I mean, since KL was doing well at that role, things were still looking well till the third test. But the calls that were made in the fourth test to, drop Shubman Gill, I mean, being very honest, it did not make sense to drop Shubman Gill ahead of Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. Being point blank, given the stature, given everything, given all that they have done in the past, Shubman Gill had still given you the scores in the recent past, although not overseas, but he was still the informed batter. Whereas with Virat and Rohit, that was not the case. Virat got that 100 in Perth, but something we'll probably talk about later. So it did not make any sense to me at all. Although Washington came in and he scored a handy 50 there, but still, dropping Gill over there did not make sense to me. You also had to move Rahul down to number three. That again changed his mindset. And I don't think he's played 4 or 5 tests in a row at the same number in how many years or so. I think that's something, a stat that somebody should look up here. But it just changed the entire batting order up and probably changed the mindset of everyone involved. It did not help Rohit Sharma. If he's having the trouble against pace in the middle order, what makes you think he'll be able to face the new ball against Mitchell Stark and Boland? Boland is the guy who sticks to his length. We'll probably discuss that later again. So that didn't make sense for me. And him like coming into the side, dropping him in the fifth test, hold call, whatever you might say. There were two batters who could have been dropped for the game, and probably the one who got the 100 or a big score much before was the one who was dropped, and that's probably what happened here. That's how I would like to see. Both could have been dropped, but then again, we probably didn't want to drop both. We wanted to drop only one of them. That was the call. No hatred towards either of the two, but I think now, like we probably reached it long ago itself, but now is the time that we've really got to look beyond the stature and look at what is actually happening on the field and off the field in the training grounds.
Valid points there, Naman. And before I come to you, Anshul, just quickly, I wanted to ask this to actually Rishabh. I mean, there's just so much, discourse about the whole, use of the word like dropped, right? Like there's this very negative connotation that's used because it's Rohit Sharma, it's Virat Kohli, dropping them seems like doing some next level crime and all of that. So how do you look at this aspect? Because it was just spoken about so much, right? Rohit Sharma's being dropped, but him opting out. It's just words at this point, no?
So the first thing
Yes,
that
but
I
yeah.
the first thing that I wanted to say about this is, I mean, BCCI has never been known for their accountability. They have never come out and said things the way they are. They've always been one of those people who just wanted to ensure that they don't receive any sorts of backlash from the toxic media, toxic fan clubs, fan bases, whatever you want to call it. Because obviously, at this point of time, it's fair to say that certain players in the Indian cricket community, they've got a really strong PR game. And when I say that, I mean, I can obviously provide exhibits to support my theory, but I mean, we all saw that on Twitter for the past couple of days. But then again, the thing with BCCI is they have never been known for their accountability as far as decision making is concerned. I mean, I don't really remember the last time either of the selectors came out and openly said that why a particular player has been dropped, or whether they are being dropped in the first place. The another problem that comes with it is the superstar culture that we have got. So the problem with that is, again, the fan base becomes very toxic when you are idol worshipping certain players. I mean, it's one thing to term this as legends of the game, which they obviously are, without a doubt, but it's completely another thing to defend themselves when they are when they themselves know that they aren't up to the potential that they possess. Just to mention the case of Virat Kohli, he got dismissed. I mean, he batted 9 innings. As this, I think, will probably come later in the later in the podcast as well about this. But just to give a brief of it, he batted 9 times in the series. He was dismissed 8 times, and all those 8 dismissals were in the slip cordon or to the wicket keeper. So I mean, that just goes on to tell that the opposition had a really simple plan to him. I mean, I reckon Boland also came out publicly and said that we just had a simple plan that, okay, just bowl fifth, sixth stump line to him. Sooner or later, he'll just edge it. And mind you, we are talking about the legend of the game. But then again, neither the management nor the player themselves are ready to take accountability of it. So obviously, it's going to be one of those cases where, the management really cannot come out and say things very boldly that, okay, this player is being dropped. I mean, we also saw in the interview that Rohit Sharma gave during the lunch break, if I remember correctly. I mean, to begin with, to draw, it's one thing to drop your captain, but it's whole another thing for a player who's not even in the playing 11 to interview during the lunch break. I mean, just it just sets a lot of discourse for the entire test, for the entire match. And obviously, when you are touring Australia, it's never easy because you aren't really playing against the guys, 11 guys that are on the field. You are actually playing against a whole nation because the crowd is the 12th man, the media is the 13th man. So obviously, it's going to be challenging. And uh, from what I understood from that interview of Rohit, there were a lot of thinking, particularly about the kind of words that he was using. Obviously, that it's a really good thought. It's a really good thing to think twice about the kind of words you are choosing to express certain decisions, to explain the process behind the decision making. But obviously, you also have to make sure that. Uh, But also you have to make sure that you are being very honest, because at the end of the day that was the whole agenda of that interview. But by the looks of it, by the end of it, it did not seem like it was something, it did not seem like it was an honest conversation. It seemed like it was more of face saving, basically, because of obviously all the chaos that preceded that particular interview, with all the dressing room leaks and everything associated with it.
Fair enough. And Rishabh, did you quickly want to add something to this one?
Yeah, that's what. So the thing is, vocabulary becomes important. Dropped has a negative connotation to it. Now, when the moment you say, now if you say rested or opted out, then it comes across as, okay, Rohit has is doing something for the benefit of the team. Now, here's the thing: if this was the case, why is he coming back to the Border-Gavaskar Trophy squad in the first place? This team did brilliantly well without him in the first Test match. So if this element of selflessness had to feature, it could have featured a lot earlier. It, but in any case, I mean, then again, he's the captain of the team, so there's that. That being said, if if they were to say dropped, then immediately it's a call that, okay, fine, the coaches have identified that the performances aren't good enough and everything, and now they have to basically sideline this person who so happens to be the captain of the team. And this has ramifications beyond just the Border Gavaskar Trophy, because like Anshul mentioned, the superstar culture of that has been created within Indian cricket. Anything of this sort, and immediately you'll have brand managers and 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 a lot of these endorsement folks who start wondering, saying, okay, the person that we are sort of investing a lot on is apparently no longer required by the Indian team or whatever. So vocabulary becomes a very tricky scenario here. Even though I do think at some level Rohit would have decided made this call on his own, given that his ever since he got included, he hardly got going in this series. So, but uh, I mean, it was still unnecessary drama. The Indian Express report that came just literally 2 days before the test match, with all sorts of stuff that's happening in the dressing room. Not speculating who was a source, not speculating how it got leaked, but it's a bad look. It's a bad look on the whole thing, and the people involved. So it's definitely something that, and it doesn't help. We are 2-1 down in the series, and we need a united dressing room to beat Australia. Like Anshul mentions, you are literally facing an entire country, and at a time when morale is low, and then all of a sudden this comes up, it's gonna cause it causes problems. So it was definitely not something to be excited about. I do feel that it did play a part in sort of, I mean, the morale within the Indian dressing room didn't seem that great to begin with, and this just kind of did not help it at all. It's very strange. The headlines are being dominated by a player who's not playing in that test match. So and that's why, like what Anshul mentioned, that in that interview, in the middle of the test match, of someone who's not playing, to clarify everything, to clarify the situation. Why is it that happening in the middle of the test match? Do it afterwards, or maybe do it beforehand. So it's a problem, and I think this definitely needs addressing for the future. So yeah, definitely not a good look not a good look for us overall.
Yeah, because somewhere I think that line between journalism and sensationalism is again just getting extremely blurry, reminding us of the time when Virat was like what, stripped of test captaincy and all the reports and leaks and everything that is sort of happening back then. But also, guys, just looking at the team combination bit, I'll just take Ujjwal's comment here. There's no explanation of playing with two spinners in back-to-back tests in a series where Lyle has picked what, 9 wickets out of 86. So, Naman, I'll start off with you on this one. I mean, India's strategy of opting with two spinners, not trusting their fourth seamer enough, was criticized heavily, right? So again, what do you think was the rationale of going in with two spinners and just not trusting the fourth seamer enough?
Uh, in a nutshell, lack of confidence in the players that have been picked. Lack of confidence in the top order, lack of confidence in the seamers that were picked in the squad. You did not trust your top order to give you runs, specifically the top four, barring one player or two players. You did not trust the other two to get runs. We have spoken. We have taken the names already, and other than that, even the bowling attack that was picked. Other than Bumrah and Siraj, all others had single-digit numbers of test matches. The guy who was playing for you in the home season as your third seamer was not selected in the first two tests. The others, probably the one guy who can hit the deck consistently, who can hold his line and lengths, was not even in the squad, was in the traveling reserves. I'm talking about Mukesh Kumar here. So that first of all speaks that the bowling attack was definitely thin, and yeah, you didn't have trust in everybody. You needed people who can chip in with the runs if you lose your top order early, and you also needed people to come into the bowling attack if your premier bowlers did not do the job. So where else would you go? You would get in the likes of Jadejas and the Sundars, and obviously Reddy. So Jadeja, I think we all can agree he can fit in the team as a pure batter and a pure bowler. He has time and again showed it. He did not play the first two tests, God knows why. So that's been there. I don't think any of us can debate Jadeja's presence here. About Reddy, it was definitely a punt starting from the very day when the squad was selected. It's a punt that paid off in its own way. Not the reason why he was picked, but in its own way it paid off for the team. The question again comes down to Sundar. What was his place about? Was it just because of his performance in the home season? And probably his call was again because of the same. You did not trust your top order to get the runs, and you did not trust your bowling attack to get you the wickets. You did not trust your seamers to bowl consistently, to bowl longest spells. So you got the spinner in. I mean, not just the wickets that Nathan Lyon got, the amount of overs that he's bowled. If we if we can probably pull out some numbers and the percentage of overs or the deliveries that he has bowled in a four test or a five test series in Australia, I'm definitely sure it would be the lowest over the past decade because of the because of first of all the tracks that were laid out. Even in grounds like Sydney, we have not seen Sydney do this. We have never seen a Sydney track behave like that. And that goes on to say that the conditions were not read. And even if the conditions were read, you did not have the confidence in your batting order to get the runs. And you did not have confidence in the paces to pick the wickets or to just stop the flow of runs. And once you get into that kind of a mindset, you're not thinking in an attacking manner. You're getting extremely defensive. So this defensive nature was seen right first of all from the 11 that was being picked, and then of course on the field the way certain tactics were going on in the three middle tests to be very precise, the kind of field settings that were there. I'm sure like we can probably debate about it overall, but then again, it was just lack of confidence in your players.
Yeah, I think in all fairness, some of the tactics were really bizarre. Something that I think we will kind of reflect on in the course of our discussion as well. Another comment by Ujjwal that I actually want to highlight and probably direct to Anshul. So yeah, Cummins in this series has 30 less runs than Virat and 8 less wickets than Bumrah. What a useless cricketer. Obviously, Ujjwal being tongue in cheek here. But Anshul, let's just quickly get your thoughts on Cummins. The captain man has won almost everything that he has set his sights on. So yeah, just talk to us about Pat Cummins and the kind of role he continues to play for Australia.
Let's just give it a broader prospect. Let's just not talk about this series, but the stats since January 2022. I think since then, Cummins has the same number of runs that Virat Kohli has scored in Tests, and he is very similar to the number of wickets that Jasprit Bumrah, a specialist bowler, has picked in Tests. That just goes on to say what a horrendous the horrendous run that Virat Kohli has been having for the past couple of years now, and just goes on to show how consistently Pat Cummins has been performing for Australia across not just across formats but particularly in Tests, where he's literally averaging the best that he has ever. Like you mentioned, he has won everything. That every major trophy that's there in the game of cricket, particularly in the test arena. With Australia conquering BGT, he has ensured that at this point of time, Australia hold rights of every test trophy that is contested, every bilateral. They've got the test mace as well. They've qualified for the WTC final for the second time, obviously allowing them to defend their test mace. And at the same time, they also are looking in a really good shape in terms of the transition as well. So by the looks of it, from what I feel, Pat Cummins, the cricketer, he's just a magician, because time and again he has created those moments of magic, really, where you just see the opponent having a little bit of upper hand, but in comes Pat Cummins and he changes the course of the game. Time and again, it has happened in this series. It happened in a couple of tests as well, particularly in Adelaide, where it did look like India might have a little bit of upper hand, but in comes Pat Cummins with the new ball on in the morning session, and bang, it's just chaos after that, because Australia did not let loose. Even in the Sydney test, it did look like in the first innings where India seemed that they might be building partnerships, but in comes Pat Cummins into the attack, and he just does Pat Cummins things. I mean, KL Rahul in particular, I believe that he started the series in such a promising manner, but once Pat Cummins found the chink in his armor, he just did not drop the top off. And arguably Pat Cummins might be one of those bowlers who hits the top off more frequently than any other bowler of this generation, at least. So I think more than Pat Cummins, the bowler, we need to also understand how smart Pat Cummins, the captain, is. He knows when to change the bowlers. He knows when one of his bowlers are not as effective as others. And I mean, just that hunch he had with giving Travis Head that over at MCG, just to ensure that they don't lack on over rate, it literally triggered a collapse. That was just a hunch he had that, okay, let's try Travis, let's let him roll his arm just to catch up on the over rate, because it did look like India were playing for the draw from get go. At no point of time it seemed that India were going for the win, because if I remember the numbers correctly, although I'm not that big a fan of numbers, I think by the end of 15th over, India had just 25 runs on the board, and they had recently lost their skipper as well. So it just goes on to show that they never had that intent, despite of the fact that Rohit Sharma went on to say that, yeah, we were trying to go for a win. But obviously, even if you were trying to blunt the new ball, just trying to make sure that it gets soft so that you can capitalize in the afternoon session, it did not seem like they tried to capitalize in the afternoon session either, where they surprisingly did not lose any wicket. I mean, there was a brilliant partnership between Jaiswal and Pant, but it did look like a rear guard. Let's be honest. At no point of time it looked like they were going for the win. And obviously, if you are trying to chase a target of 200ish in one session on day 5 in Australia, like I said, you're just not playing against Australia. You're playing against an entire nation, and MCG is one of the most hostile places, merely because of Bay 13 and how hostile environment it can get. I mean, as a it, Bay 13 is basically the 12th man of Australia on that field, so it's never easy. And once Pat Cummins had that uh, hunch, he executed it. It paid off. Australia never looked back after that. So obviously, more than I think Pat Cummins the player, we need to celebrate Pat Cummins the captain more. I mean, long gone are days where you go woke or you go broke. Here, Pat Cummins has gone woke, but he isn't breaking at no point of time.
Yeah, I think we're really privileged, even as the India fans, to be watching Pat Cummins, the man just do whatever he does, and every time, unfortunately, the opposition ends up just becoming India. But it's difficult not to admire a character like him and the kind of value he adds to that setup. And I'll also take this comment, probably direct this one to Rishabh. Goes on to say one reason why we lost the series that no one is mentioning is we got the number 2 ranked bowler injured just to face a bowler who knows every inch about how to bowl in Australia. Okay. Felt like a riddle there, but I thought he was referring to Shami not being a part of this series as well. And I mean, there were a lot of reports, they might bring him in the latter part of the tour and everything. But that clearly wasn't the case. But Rishabh, do you again echo a similar sentiment that India missed Shami a lot, or am I just not getting this comment right? Yeah.
Big time. Mohammad Shami was a big loss. I think it was we were, really hoping that Shami really recovers from his injury, and then we could somehow integrate Shami, if not in the beginning of the BGT, then at least maybe as the competition moves on. Um, but because Shami and Bumrah work really well in tandem, and we saw that in the 2023 World Cup, and beyond that as well. So we were all stressing about his injury, and once it became clear that he was not going to return, then I guess it was it was definitely a setback, no doubt. Shami has been a mainstay of our red ball setup for a long time, and I think he would have been really effective. I mean, just if you imagine Mohammad Shami in that green top at Sydney, the damage he could have done. But yeah, and because Shami not being there, it kind of left our fast bowling department quite a little bit light. We had to rely on folks like Akashdeep and Harshit Rana. I mean, of course, Mohammad Siraj, but I think because the way how I guess the Indian fast bowling setup is, it's like the three pronged attack of Australia has of Stark, Hazelwood, and Cummins. India kind of has something similar with with Bumrah, Siraj, and Shami, and I think m- I would say maybe you could say Mohammad Siraj is a little bit better off as the third seamer rather than the second seamer. But that's by the by. I we did expect more from Mohammad Siraj, even though I mean you can't sort of discredit his work rate. The the guy really gave it his best. He for all five test series, it just so happened that he was rather inconsistent with his performances, and that, and given how he couldn't just he I given how effective Bumrah was on the other hand, you needed Siraj to kind of be the supporting act, which he wasn't able. I guess he wasn't able to do well enough. So Mohammad Shami definitely a loss. But then again, that was also something that we had anticipated before the BGT. We kind of we were it was a tricky situation whether he would make it or not. So whether his fitness would be back on track. So it was something that we could have probably prepared for. Like Naman said, Mukesh Kumar definitely could have had, you know, could have made he could have definitely made it into the team, but again, nowhere to be seen. Um, Questions are again to be raised about Harshit Rana and whether he was drafted a little too early, even though he did well in the first test, I'd say. But you could tell after the first test that he had run out of juice. So it was definitely something which, yeah, a bit of a missed trick, really, I guess, from the Indian setup there.
Yeah, and apologies, guys. Actually, Ujjwal was talking about Scott Boland and Hazelwood. It was completely on me. But Anshul and Naman, if you guys have to just add something on this bit as well.
Yeah, I mean certainly, it's a shame when you lose your it's a shame when you do lose your top three, any of your top three bowlers. But obviously, Scott Boland coming, it's literally a like for like replacement. I'd go on to say that Scott Boland is not actually the replacement anymore. He's actually one of those guys who Australia can actually use as as far as rotation of bowlers is concerned. I mean, I think I said this prior to the beginning of the series as well, that at no point of time I see all the three bowlers playing all five tests, because obviously there's going to be rotation, and Scott Boland has that quality within him. Like Ujjwal mentioned, he knows every inch of how to bowl in Australia, and obviously that comes with consistent performances in domestic circuit. For a long period of time, MCG used to dish out wickets that were really dead. I mean, we all are familiar with the outcome of 2017 Ashes Boxing Day Test. Where Alistair Cook went on to score 200, if I remember correctly. So Boland has been playing for more than a decade on such wickets at MCG. So obviously he is like Ujjwal mentioned, he's aware of how to bowl in Australia better than anybody else, because not only he is been playing domestic cricket, but at the same time he's been coming across players of different generation, not only the guys in the mid 2010s but also the guys in the early 2020s as well. So obviously with change in generation of batters, the kind of players, their approach changes as well. And when you come across different kind of players on different kinds of wickets, obviously that experience counts somewhere, which is something that a lot of people are talking about Indian batters as well, as to the Indian batter should actually go back to the drawing board, go back to the domestic circuit, play a few domestic games. I think Naman also mentioned it in one of his previous sessions that the Indian batters who are literally out of form, let's just not call names, but they should really go back to the domestic circuit and play a few domestic games just to get acclimatized with the changing conditions that are being dished out in the home conditions. So obviously, when you have somebody of that caliber to replace one of your frontline bowlers, it's never a case of replacement, but more like a blessing in disguise, I would say. More a case of rotation, because at any point of time, any of your bowlers from the bench can come and obviously pick from where the frontline bowler left. So I mean that's one quality that has been offered to Australia by virtue of all the hard work that Scott Boland has put in the domestic circuit, the Shield cricket, for almost a decade. So I think Australia is reaping rewards of that.
Yeah, and the man is literally a force of nature, every single time just coming in. I think he ended up as one of the top wicket takers in the series as well, right? With like 21 wickets, I think. So it just goes to show the amazing series he had. I think a very memorable one, and has obviously given a lot of nightmares to Indian fans as well. But
I
as
mean,
much
if
as we. Hmm.
if you look at it, the three tests that Scott Boland has played, we went on to win those. The other one that we lost at Perth, he did not feature in the 11, and Brisbane, it was a draw. But then again, Scott Boland did not feature there as well. So the three tests that he has played, Adelaide, Melbourne, and the SCG, of course, he has picked plethora of wickets. He has made sure that whenever he comes, your first change bowler is somebody who most of the teams these days playing test cricket think that the first change bowler is where they can actually capitalize. They can actually make sure that now they had navigated through the opening new ball phase, they can actually capitalize on the third bowler, on the first change bowler or the second change bowler. The luxury that Australia have had is that the first change bowler is very capable of taking the new ball as well, because obviously in Shield cricket, Scott Boland has been taking that new ball. So it just shows in the kind of control that he has. With the ball that is literally 8 overs, 10 overs, 12 overs, 15 overs old as well, particularly when the big opening bowlers are having an extended spell. So he has shown time and again that he has got the capability. And I think, yeah, it's just one of those things where you just have to applaud the bowler for all the hard work that he has done over the years.
Definitely, and I'm glad you brought in the aspect of all the hard yards he's put in domestic cricket and how he's toiled, not being Australia's immediate first choice pick, and how he still continues to be relevant in that setup. And as much as we rave about, Australia's bowling as well, I think this stat by Ujjwal also puts things in perspective. And Naman, I'll get your thoughts on this one. Now, the 9 innings that India has played, they've scored less than 206 occasions, a 250 courtesy Bumrah and Akashdeep, a 350 and a 480. So, when you look at the series at large, just India's batting performances have been very lackluster, dismal, just call it whatever adjective you want. How would you look at it?
Well, great one, Ujjwal. I was myself going to bring this up eventually as the conversation went on. I had my Crickbuzz open just for this, all the matches. Like in Perth, it was all the brilliance of Jaiswal and KL Rahul, the kind of stand that they put up in the beginning, and then we went on to capitalize on that. Then go on to Adelaide, pink ball. We were never going to do well against it. Then in Brisbane also, we just scored a 260, and there also we know how the runs came. Even in Melbourne, it all was thanks to Nitish Reddy and Washington Sundar, the partnership that they stitched. So every time where we have gone on to get a huge score, it has been the middle and the lower order, barring Perth where Kohli got 100. Well, of course, their conditions were set for him. Not stealing any credit from him, but then it was probably not the most challenging of the conditions. So you cannot expect to score 200 plus in an innings if your top four or top five are not delivering consistently. And in the first 2 3 games, even Rishabh Pant was not at his best. He was probably just getting used to things, and in the last two tests is where he actually got into his mojo. So if your top five is not scoring runs consistently and like I think within the first three tests, Nitish Reddy was the highest scorer in 4 out of 5 innings for us. If your debutant in the series, the guy who's coming in at number seven, number eight, is your top run scorer, and that too sub 50. He didn't score more than 50 in any of those innings, and he was your top scorer. If that is going to be the case, then it's just clear signs that your batting order is screwed. So that I think we'll just go on talking about the same thing, saying the same names all over again. So we're not gonna talk too much on it. And yeah, courtesy Bumrah and Akashdeep, the partnership that they had staged in that game. I was I was sitting in college. I had an interview lying up next, but my mind was completely on that game. I could not. I was just waiting to see. Okay, let's just deny the follow on. Let's just deny the follow on, and I could not focus on anything else at that point. And the way those two batted, you cannot expect that to happen in every game. Obviously, if you are expecting that to happen in every game, bro, you don't have a batting lineup. So if you and I think even today somebody mentioned on our group that if somebody is going to blame Bumrah or the bowling attack for these losses, please try to understand cricket. That's not how it works. Your bowling lineup can take the wickets, and like as a unit as well, they're probably not done the best, but they have done good. It's been the batting order that has really let us down. So yeah, I mean, can go on at length talking about the few cricketers that have to improve certain things, but yeah, let's leave that for later.
I mean,
Yeah, and I
yeah,
think
you rightly
Anshul,
mentioned, Naman, about the lower middle order and the tail enders saving India's face at particularly at Brisbane and Melbourne. The Nitish Kumar Reddy century, the Washington, his partnership with Sundar, obviously Bumrah and Akashdeep, sorry, avoiding that follow on at Brisbane. So, I mean, this isn't something that has been happening particularly in this series. I think this is one of the patterns that has been happening for, I think, two to three seasons now, like a couple of home seasons, a couple of away seasons as well, where the Indian middle order has been saving faces for India. They've been getting India to those competitive, respectable scores from where they can actually try to get something out of that game. Uh, and I mean, obviously, when something like this is happening for that long a period, it just goes on to show that your top order is not clicking consistently. I mean, Perth was now that you look in hindsight, Perth's second innings seems like a anomaly amongst the problems that India has been having for a long time now. It's just one of those innings where Australia looked dead flat because they just could not recover from the events that happened in their first dig, where they were all out for 105 odd, if I remember correctly. And it just looked like that they were flat in terms of what had transpired a few moments ago. And it was one of those cases where India had better conditions for the batting as well, and they just capitalized. So like I said, now that you look in hindsight, it just looks like one of those outlier innings where the Indian top order actually set up a platform, and obviously where the middle order cashed in. Because I mean, from my memory, I cannot recall a test where or a series where the Indian top order has performed consistently, provided that platform for number 4 5 batters to just come out and go gaga about the over the old ball. Because I mean, it has been more often than not the case where the number 4 or 5 batters or the lower middle order, like you mentioned about Ashwin, the lower middle order has been saving India's faces in test matches, home and abroad. So I mean, obviously, when something like this is happening for that longer period, it's just not a bowling unit's fault that the team is not getting those results that they desire. It's obviously that the batters are not giving the bowlers enough runs to defend or uh, to just have a dig at the opponent. So obviously you can't be expecting your team to, I mean, like I said, you can't be expecting your team to put up 150 on the board and then expect your bowlers to bowl out the opposition within that every now and then. So I mean, yeah, it's just one of those things with that where it's just about going back to the drawing board, understanding and particularly accepting everything. that okay, this is one of the flaws that we have got in our system or maybe in our lineup at this moment. I mean, Gautam Gambhir talked about. I did not hear the whole press conference, but we talked about domestic performances being given value, but at no point of time did I see any conversation regarding getting Dhruv Jurel or maybe an Abhimanyu Iswaran in the playing 11. There were not even rumors for, despite of the team having so many leagues. So obviously, it just goes on to show these guys have put in so many hard yards. Sarfaraz Khan as well, another person who has put in so many hours into the domestic cricket. They've come out triumphant. They've performed consistently for a long period of time, and yet they were overlooked for the big names who have not been performing for a long period of time. So I mean, it's just about addressing the issues. And obviously you cannot blame your bowlers as well. I mean, talking about Shami and how India missed him dearly, obviously Shami is somebody who could have actually been flown after around the time of Brisbane test. But then again, there are certain ugly behind the scenes that I would actually not want to go into, because I recently had a conversation with one of the cricketers who has played for India, who is in touch with these players, and he has had a conversation with Shami, and he went on to say that there's just really ugly scenes between certain players and Shami ever since that Cricket World Cup in India concluded back in 2023. And I mean, obviously, when you are holding grudges against the players who can actually give you results, your team is just going to falter. You might win one game, but you are never going to win a series if you just keep performing like that. And that has been happening with India as well. They've lost Sri Lanka, uh, uh, they've lost Australia, they've lost New Zealand at home, which was again a surprising thing to happen in the first place. So I mean, I hear that barring Bangladesh, Gautam Gambhir hasn't defeated any test team. So I mean, it just goes on to show that there are certain cracks, if I should say it like that, in the setup. And obviously it's just about addressing it. And now that India are eliminated from the WTC cycle, they've got ample amount of time to take accountability for these things. And obviously the seniors have to make the right call. I mean, if you don't want to retire, there's no problem with it, but you just have to address that you have got problem, you have got flaws. And the way to rectify it is just get back to the drawing board, get into the domestic circuit, put in those hard yards and earn your spot. That's all I think the Indian team requires right now, because a reset is never going to help you. You can't really I mean, obviously it's a transition phase. You can't really be putting players the experienced players out of the team and bringing 11 youngsters. Obviously there has to be a nice balance between the experienced people and the youngsters, the experienced lads and the youngsters. But then again, it's about making sure that even your experienced ones are full of confidence to provide that guidance to the youngsters, because that's how the transition works, where your experienced players provide that little bit of space to your youngsters. They tell them that okay, this is how it works, this is how the international cricket is, this is how you tackle different situations against different opponents when you are at home or maybe touring some country. And if your seniors are not confident about something, it just goes on to show that your youngsters, you can't really be relying on your youngsters every now and then, right? I mean, there has to be a line drawn where you say that okay, this is not working out, and I think you just need to work on it. And until you don't, uh, it's only fair that you just, I mean, it's only fair that you just not feature in the 11, because you don't deserve it, frankly speaking.
Yeah, I mean, some really tough calls that India will have to take after this series and heading into the next cycle, because Ujjwal's comment again, goes on to add the next WTC cycle will be the toughest for India. There's going to be away tours with England, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, home series versus West Indies, South Africa, and Australia. The kind of government we had at home, you're thinking, how many home series we're going to win? Like, 12 years we've had that sort of a dominance, but clearly, it's scary the kind of things that we will have to phase. There was actually just one more thing. I think that Naman or Rishabh wanted to kind of add on. So if you guys wanted to add that, yeah, just go for it.
I think it's more or less on the similar lines to how Ujjwal had mentioned about Aksar, Ashwin, and Jadeja helping us with the runs in the home season. And similarly, as you also brought up the coming few series that are lined up, If you look at the teams that we are facing at home, Australia will be touring us, and so will be South Africa. Now, if you talk about both the lineups, first of all, the runs. Obviously, in the home season as well, in the BGT that was there in 2023, Akshar Patel was our most consistent batter in that series. Although Virat Kohli got those big runs at Ahmedabad, Akshar Patel was the one who had been chipping in with runs, and had it not been for 30 minutes of sweeping madness, as Adir Anshul likes to put it, scoreline could have been the other way around. And similarly, if you talk about moving ahead, South Africa toured India the last time was in 2019. That was 6 years ago from now, and that was a team which was moving towards transition. And there were new players coming in. Oh, some games Markram was opening, then you got De Kock to open. They didn't have an established spin attack. Now they have Keshav Maharaj, who's actually been doing pretty well. He has really cemented his spot, and he's a three format player, although people don't really give him credit for the shorter formats. He's there as a great spinner. Even if we talk about Australia, Kuhneman bowled pretty well when he came the last time, and he would be coming back in with much more lessons, and he would have played in Sri Lanka as well. So the teams that are now coming into Tour India, they will have the players with the experience to bowl in these conditions. So that will be a challenge. And then again, if we do not play batters who have played domestic cricket in the recent times, we cannot expect to win the series. We cannot expect batters who have batted on flat decks in T20 tournaments where 260 to 70 runs have been scored. That's not happening. The conditions are different, the ball is different, it's going to do different stuff. You have to get people who have been playing domestic, then only you can tackle the spin. And at this point, if you look at the team, how many players can you actually say are good players of spin? Good players, not just bashing spin. Rishabh Pant can bash spin, he can play it a bit as well. Jaiswal can play a bit of spin as well. Virat Kohli, definitely. I'm sorry for being very blunt here, but he's not a player of spin at all. You've got to bring those kind of players. Shreyas Iyer is probably one of the best players of spin in India. He had his own technical flaws, but I'm sorry, all the batters in the lineup currently have their own technical flaws, but none of them has been done away with as much as somebody like a Shreyas Iyer has been. So you've got to get those kind of players in for the conditions to make sure that your team is winning. If you're just gonna go with players because okay they did well in this particular tournament, in that particular format, in that particular country, so they're going to do well here, dude, that's not how cricket works. It's not it's not like any other sport. I'm not going to mention any, but it is very condition specific. You have to go horses for courses in certain places. You would have your legends, you would have players who probably hold a stature that they need to feature. But if you want to win the games, then those harsh calls need to be taken. And I think towards the next cycle again, we are touring England and we are touring New Zealand. We were very close to winning in England the last time. In New Zealand, I cannot recall the last time we won a test match. The last time we toured New Zealand was in 2020. That was a horror tour for the entire team. It was horrific. I remember waking up at 3:30, working on my CIAs at the same time and looking at the matches, and it was a nightmare. So you've got to pick players who can play the swinging ball over there, and you've got to pick players who can play the spinning ball in India. And how do you get that? For India, you pick players who are doing well in Ranji. For those overseas conditions, you make sure your prospects are playing county. Somebody like an Abhimanyu Ishwaran who doesn't have an IPL contract, send him to play county. He will get that experience because if you've got to have a shift or you've got to have a different opener in England, it's probably going to be Abhimanyu Ishwaran or Patikal or Sai Sudarshan, one of these. KL Rahul is there, KL and Yashasvi are definitely there, but then that's different conversation altogether. But you've got to ensure that those who are not in the IPL, at least they should go and play county. And that's how you get those players to do well in England and New Zealand. Ranji Trophy, I mean, I'm sorry, Virat Kohli has got to play Ranji Trophy if he wants to feature in England. He only has the three. He's not going to play the T20s against England. He's going to play the ODIs and then the Champions Trophy. He's had ample rest before it. He's got to play Ranji Trophy if he wants to continue playing Test cricket. I cannot put it in any sugar-coated words.
No, thank you, Naman. Actually, that really put things in perspective, because I think for a lot of these star players, everything relies on, like, a lot of it depends on their past laurels, and fans and fan armies tend to keep bringing that up. But I think I'll direct this question to Rishabh. Again an usual question. Virat now has an average less than 47. Is he even in the top three Indian batters or even in the top five? So yeah, Rishabh, your thoughts on this one? Naman has already given his thing. Buck stops here. He has to play Ranji Trophy. He has to go back to domestic. But where do you find yourself in this debate?
Especially I think with the Virat Kohli questions, I remember when there was a I think the when Neha, when you were speaking with Bharat after the New Zealand rout that happened, and the question that I think was asked was, is it time for us to move on from Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, especially when it comes to red ball cricket? I'm of the opinion that yes. I think it's time for them to sort of to actually call it a day. Naman is obviously arguing for Virat to play Ranji Trophy. I would say the same. Either that or you play the county cricket. Basically, any domestic cricket. One to first for Kohli to figure out his technique. This whole the way how Australia basically would bowl that fifth stump, sixth stump line to be to nick the ball to the first, second, third slip, and to see it happen over and over again, it's wildly frustrating. It's like you just know that Virat is gonna get dismissed in this way or the other. But to answer Ujwal's question here, top three Indian Test batters, no, definitely not in Test cricket. I think his stock in Test cricket has fallen more so after his difficulties playing spin bowling. It's really quite sad because if you really remember when in the periods between 2013 14 up in 2017 18 where we really saw the best of Virat Kohli, spin bowling was no problem for him. He this was something that he never had any issues with, and he would be perfectly adept at playing spin, as is the case with pace. And then now his technique has given away to such a degree where he looks quite susceptible to spin. I mean, if you if you remember that New Zealand Test series where Mitchell Santner basically had the name of almost every other Indian batter. Now, what's happened? I mean, it's really something to there's a question to sort of answer over here. Um, as for Virat, how long can he continue on with red ball cricket, with Test cricket after this BGT is a real question. Um, he's got to figure out how to ensure that he is not susceptible to pace bowling of that where where a similar line and length gets him dismissed. It's all, and this is not just a red ball cricket thing, even in white ball cricket this is starting to emerge. And if and how long can he continue on for? He's no spring chicken anymore. He's in his mid 30s now, and retirement is looming large, have to say. um it's and when at a time when you have so many folks like Dhruv Jurel, Sarfaraz Khan, Devdutt Padikkal, who are waiting in the ranks, who can realistically can fill that number 4 spot without problems, and it would not destabilize the current the playing 11 that we kind of have at this point of time. So yeah, but then again, it is Virat Kohli we're talking about. One of one of the great cricketers India has produced in this past decade. So that definitely becomes becomes an aspect. So it's a difficult question to where Virat carries on from here. He needs to have a real hard look at his technique, really. But I still hold out hope, because after all, he is. I still think that element of we saw glimpses of that when he scored that century in this BGT, and it felt awesome. But it also I also think, but yeah, it's some serious questions need to be asked of Virat Kohli now.
Yeah, and I think Anshul also earlier in our conversation brought in this aspect of the outside off stump delivery and how Virat Kohli is often just dismissed so frequently in this manner. Anshul, you've played cricket yourself. You continue to play cricket. So if you could just give us and all the viewers like a more technical explanation of why this is happening, because I saw like so many people just throw words like trigger movement, like his the back foot not doing the thing, the stance change, and all of that, because he did suffer the same frailties in that 2014 England tour. 2018 entirely changed, man. Why is this problem resurfacing after a good 10 years? So if you could just shed light on that.
I think a lot of people actually demand this thing from Virat that he should actually block that cover drive, and that way, I mean, just the way Sachin did at SCG. But the thing with Sachin was that he had a cut shot. He had another shot in his repertoire to navigate those fields in offside. That's not the case with Virat. He either has a cover drive or a back foot punch. He's not got that cut shot or a square cut, like we like to call it, textbook. So that's one of the reasons that he can't really be blocking that shot, because if he does that, the offside is completely out for him. Because no way you are trying to nudge the ball through. Uh, there's no way you're trying to nudge the ball through third man in test, because obviously it's just gonna go right into the hands of the slip cordon, just the way Manas Labuschagne was dismissed earlier today. In the gully region where Jaiswal, it was just catching practice for Jaiswal. No way Virat can be really doing that. But so obviously the only two shots that he has got to manipulate fields in the offside is the cover drive and the back foot punch that he so likes to play. But then again, the thing with him is more often than not, he's just trying to go chase for that delivery. Even if he's got a leg stump stance, he's just trying to go chase those deliveries. So particularly when you have got that kind of a stance, the fifth, sixth stump lines actually become like a wide delivery to you. So obviously your foot, even if you lunge so forward, your footwork is not going to get you to the pitch of the ball. And if you're just trying to even if you are just trying to cover the line of the ball and drive it through, you're just gonna nick it. One way or the other, you're just gonna nick it. So obviously these are the few technicalities. Obviously Virat is one of the legends of the game. So uh, and he is aware of this technical flaw that he has, which was very evident in the way that he was leaving deliveries outside of stump. He was aware where his off stump is, particularly at Melbourne, until he had that brain fade moment where he just went for fending that delivery by Scott Boland. Because I mean, then again, it has been happening for so long now that it's just become a muscle memory for him. That okay, if I see a delivery in that port, I mean, it obviously happens with a lot of batters that there is one particular delivery that is such a muscle memory for them. I mean, if I talk about great cricketers, club cricketers, coming through the ranks, length delivery in the body is one of those deliveries that's like bread and butter for them, because they just go for the pull over deep mid wicket. It's like bread and butter. So for them, because obviously they have practiced it so many times, it's just become a muscle memory for them. The thing with Virat is this technical flaw has been happening with him for so long, it's been persistent for such a long period, that it's just become a muscle memory for him, that whenever he sees a delivery in that particular direction, given the fact that he does not have a cut shot, he just goes for the back foot punch through extra cover, through cover region, and ends up edging the delivery. So I think that's one area where he certainly has to like make sure that, I mean, obviously it's very difficult to control your muscle memories, because it's at certain point in time it just becomes an impulse of you. You can't really help it. So obviously it's more like a mental battle now than in order to ensure that he gets through with this technical flaw. I think it's something there and there about.
Yeah, thanks, Anshan. That does again, put things in perspective for us. And as Naman, like constantly changes position, getting closer to board his flight. Naman, I'll actually direct this question to you about Yashasvi Jaiswal and Rishabh Pant, the southpaws of the team. Again, this BGT was going to be massive for both of them. Jaiswal was heralded as the new king, and Rishabh Pant has the reputation of giving the Aussies, a lot of nightmares and everything. If you could just give us a quick perspective on how this series panned out for them. Jaiswal had like waves of inconsistency, but he still, did score some runs and was a positive for India nonetheless. Rishabh Pant, well, did Rishabh Pant things and was called stupid on comms, which, okay, is the discussion for an entire podcast. But yes, quick thoughts on this duo.
Well, first of all, I think I've been moving like KL Rahul here, up and down the order. Don't have a fixed position. And yeah, getting closer to, as KL is moving closer to like his late 30s, I'm getting closer to my boarding gate now. And now coming back to your question, to begin with about Jaiswal, I think when we were previewing the tournament itself, I had mentioned that I see Jaiswal as my player to watch out for from the Indian side. and I believe there are no questions that he has delivered to the expectations that were there. Close to 400 runs, if I'm not wrong. So he's done his part. If anybody says that he should have done better in terms of the runs, I'm sorry, mate. I mean, he's been a best batter. It's his debut tour. He's done pretty well. Obviously, you know that second test, it was not coming too slow for him anymore from Mitchell Stark. So those things playing on his mind probably in the second and the third test. But then the way he batted at MCG itself, and then even those few runs that he scored at Sydney, it showed that he has the temperament and the technique to navigate the game here. Some chinks in the armory, of course, but then he's barely 20 matches old in his career right now, and he'll only have a steep learning curve from here. So with Jaiswal, amazing knock at Perth. He's shown how he can, like he's shown both his games. In Kanpur, he showed how he can just go all baseball, and at in Perth and the other games, he's shown how he can just bring out the Dravid that he has in himself. He can play the long innings. Like I mentioned, all his hundreds he has converted into 150s. So he is the guy who knows how to pick long innings. About him, somewhere or the other, those instincts of white ball may kick in at times, and then it just comes about how well you can just stay in the moment, understand and read the situations well. I mean, since we're talking about reading the situations, one place where I was highly disappointed and frustrated was with Shubman Gill in the first innings at Sydney. He had no business stepping out on that ball to Nathan Lyon. No business. That was ridiculous. I mean, I was feeling like Gavaskar. I wanted to scream that S word 3 times. So that's something where Yashasvi has shown a much better temperament if we compare. But yeah, not digging too much into Gill right now. Then talking about Rishabh, I feel the first couple of tests he did not seem his own. He did not seem in his rhythm, just getting the hang of things. Then once he got in, I believe even with him, the biggest thing that I have observed with Rishabh Pant is he is not the hardest hitter of the ball. He might hit those 100-meter sixes, but he's not the hardest hitter of the ball. You cannot expect him to be a consistent six hitter, even though he might. In IPL, you might see him hit long sixes, a number of sixes. But he's more the guy who can find gaps in the field in T20s, and that's my biggest thing with him batting in the middle order. I see him as an opener in that format because when the field is close, he can hit the ball outside the circle and get those boundaries. Even in Test cricket, if you're going to bowl to him in a manner to induce the lofted shot, most often he is going to hole out. And even if you look at his dismissals, either he has gotten out to Jaffas or he has just holed out and plays those ridiculous shots. As far as doing those laps and falling on the ground, those reverse scoops and stuff is considered, I mean, it's going to happen with him. He lives by the sword, he dies by it. We've got to accept it, but then he's just got to become a much better reader of situations. And I believe this series would be a great learning point for him as well, to understand that okay, his natural instinct is there, it has to kick in, but maybe at times the risk reward balance has to be taken into consideration, and then decide on a shot accordingly. It's just a matter of being much more wise in your shot selection as far as Pant is considered. And with Jaiswal, I mean, I have great expectations from him moving ahead. And with Pant, just one more thing to add on. There were talks about him being a pure batter, batting at number 5. Given the way he's currently going, I would rather like to see him at 6, not higher than 6. It suits his natural style more than anything. It suits his natural style. So you can slot him in at 6, and if he has to become a pure batter moving ahead, there is a Dhruv Jurel waiting in the wings to bat at 7 or 5 as a pure as a keeper as well. So yeah, those are probably things that we can look at moving ahead a year or two later, if his knees have to be managed in that manner, because he's just coming after the surgery and he's played these test matches without any evident major discomfort in his knees. So that's a great sign for the team. However, let's see the longevity of that aspect. And having said that, I believe it's time for my boarding. So I'll just stick around for you guys to speak for a while, and then once it's time, I'll just do this and drop off the meeting. So yeah, let's carry on.
Thanks, Naman. Thank you so much. And Anshul, you want to quickly add something here?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that guilt dismissal had a lot to do with the mental disintegration that had been happening in that particular over. Obviously, Gill was caught between Smith and Labuschagne. I mean, those are the last two people you are. I mean, those are the last two people you would want to be caught between. I mean, on a flight, if you have got a middle seat, you don't want Smith at window and Manas Labuschagne in a tile, because obviously those guys are just gonna rip your brains off it. And that's what happened with Gill as well. He had that one slight interaction with Smith where he just asked him to let's resume the play and stop. I mean, stop doing bullshit stuff and waste time. Make sure that it was the last over. And he just had that one conversation with Smith, and instead of responding to Gill, Manas responded to Smith that yes, you do waste a lot of time, and then he goes on to say that okay, next time you bat, you also take your time. And where Smith goes on to say that okay, yeah, I will. So at this point they aren't really having a conversation with Gill. They just said one thing to him and then they're having a conversation amongst the two of them. So obviously that is gonna, I mean, that's obviously gonna make you feel a little bit frustrated, a little bit annoyed. And obviously when you are in your zone you don't feel those emotions, but once you have lost your focus, I mean, it just take one fraction of a second for you to lose your focus in Test cricket, and that's what happened with Gill. He stepped out to have an attack, to play an attacking shot, but he just could not. He had like, I mean, he was in split minds. Obviously, he was not focused to get to the pitch of the ball or play it in a particular fashion. He was obviously in split minds, and he just stepped out and fended it. I mean, not even trying to cover the line of it. I mean, Lion was obviously coming round the wicket, and considering the lines that he was bowling, it was obviously going to be outside of off, and he just did not try to cover that, and it was like an easy catch. So I mean, more than that, more than anything, I think that Gill dismissal in the very first innings at Sydney, I think that had more to do with the fact that he was caught like a sandwich between Smith and Manas Labuschagne. And yeah, I mean, that's test cricket. I mean, obviously the opponent is just going to try to get you unsettled with different ways, and as long as I mean, like I said, when you are touring Australia, you have to be mentally very focused. Just have to make sure that you just don't poke the bear, because you never know when the opponent might come triumphant when you hurt their ego. And that's what happened with Mitch as well at Perth. When Jaiswal had that little bit of interaction with him, it's coming too slow. If you remember, Stark had been averaging 140-ish in terms of his speeds during the last couple of seasons. This season, he's been clocking 145 with much ease. I mean, obviously, when you play to a man's ego, uh, he's a stalwart of the game. Jaswal has just started his Test career. Mitchell Stark is towards the fag end of his career compared to the beginning of it. So obviously he has got that loads of experience. He's been the player of the tournament for so many World Cups. He has been a stalwart of the red ball game as well. And ever since that period where he was not that consistent with his line and length, he's developed that wobble seam, 3/4 seam delivery as well, where it's just another, he's just added another weapon in his arsenal, in his already rich arsenal. So I mean, when you are coming across a player like that, you also obviously have to be a little bit of you have to show that humility. You should not poke the bear, and that's exactly what Jaswal did at Perth. And as a result, a first ball at Adelaide, I think even in the second inning, Jaswal was taken by Boland, where he tried to capitalize on. I mean, he tried to play out Stark and capitalize on the other bowler, which in that scenario happened to be Boland, and it just plays on your mind when a bowler has an upper hand on you. It just goes on to show that okay, you are, I mean, the opponent is obviously having a higher control over you compared to what you have over yourself. So I think with Jaswal, he obviously has got a lot of talent. Even in the series preview, I had said this, that if there is one Indian batter that I'm really looking forward to as to how they perform in the series, it's Jaswal, because of the temperament that he has. And like Naman mentioned, he showed it. It was very evident in that second dig in Perth. It was evident in Melbourne as well, in the second innings, where he was literally holding the fort until he was set up very cleverly by Pat Cummins. Again, It was, I mean, I don't think it was I mean, I don't think it was a rash shot or T20 skills of I think it was not a rash shot or a T20 skills or T20 mindset clicking in over there. I think it had more to do with the fact that the setup, just the sheer brilliance of Pat Cummins, just the setup that he had put. It was all fast bouncers until the point he put up that off cutter, a slow bouncer, something that he has been known for ever since that Ahmedabad final. And Jaswal was just caught in the moment. He just did not expect the ball to come at that speed, and obviously he ended up edging it. And even he was very sure of the deviation that okay, he has edged it. Even Travis had asked him that you have edged it, and he was like, "Yeah." I mean, in a very hesitant manner until he saw that there was nothing on the snicker. So obviously, I mean, that just goes on to show that you had the temperament in yourself, because I think it was an 80 odd, if I remember correctly, and to play that kind of a knock at MCG against the kind of attack that I mean the against the uh, lines and lengths, the rhythm of the Australian bowling attack. I think that innings just went on to show that Jaswal has got a bright future, but he just has to make sure that he just does not overdo things, because obviously he did that in Perth. We also are aware of the fact that when Mitchell Stark was particularly targeted in the lead up of Ashes 2021-22, he went on to win the player of the series in that particular series. So obviously he was targeted by a lot of media houses. Shane Warne in particular was very adamant of him being selected in the playing 11 in the first place. But then that's just the brilliance of Mitchell Stark. He's been a stalwart of the game. He has got that loads of experience behind him, and obviously that's what the legends of the game do when they've got their backs against the wall. They just admit that okay, this is where I am lacking. They go on to upskill themselves, and obviously they come out triumphant of that particular form slump, which Mitchell Stark did time and again. And I think at this point of time, he has nothing to prove to a youngster that okay, at what speed it's coming. He's been one of those players who has bowled 160, if I remember correctly. So I mean, even with a broken, I mean, even with a stressed ribs, he went on to clock 145. He gave everything. I mean, I was personally very surprised that he featured in that SCG lineup because of how cooked he looked in following the Melbourne test. I mean, if I remember correctly, he did not bowl into the third session much, merely because of the fact that he was in extreme pain. It was very visible during that second session, the afternoon session where India went wicketless, that Mitchell Stark was completely out of sorts. He was really struggling, but yet he was bowling 145 clicks. And on that kind of a deck, with that level of bounce, 145 clicks is still a lot of pace to deal with. So obviously you don't really do that unless and until, I mean, even if you are the best of the best, even if you are that kind of a player, you don't really do that, because you never know. Cricket is a big leveler. One moment you say that okay, it's coming too slow, literally the other game, you've got a first ball duck. So it just goes on to show that you can never put yourself ahead of the game, because like I said, cricket is a great leveler. It's just going to bring you down the moment you have that little bit of ego that okay, I am the best, because there are a lot of people other than you who are in the game as well. As far as Pant is concerned, I think Sydney first innings was one of the ugliest Pant innings that I have seen. Obviously resilient, because uh, he faced every bowler. He made them come on in their second spell, third spell, and that was one of the most unpunt innings that I've ever seen, because of the fact that the kind of deliveries that he was fending. I mean, any other day he would have put those deliveries, deposited them into the stands. I mean, that's exactly what he did. The very first delivery he faced from Scott Boland in the second innings, this was exactly the kind of deliveries that he was defending in the first innings, because he had that outside noise in his mind that okay, I'm supposed to play this way, I'm supposed to play it this way. He had that defensive mindset in that first innings. Obviously that 40 he scored in the first dig, I think it took India to a really respectable score. But if you look at it, the rest of the Indian batters chipped in. They scored some 120, 140. At the same time, had Pant played his natural game, which is something that hit in the second day, India could have scored something around about 250, because obviously the momentum would have not been with Australia for that long. We could see it in the second inning where once Pant started going gaga, Australia had no answer for him. I mean, Rishabh Pant is actually one of those batters who once gets on song, it's really hard to stop him, because the kind of, if you set one field, he's just going to play it in the other direction, which is something that happened with Sam Constas as well. They blocked his ram by putting in a deep third man. The moment they brought him, he stopped playing that shot. He started playing traditional cricket. The moment they brought it up, he started to shift the momentum into Australia's direction and played a ram shot. And mind you, he played it to Jasprit Bumrah. He played it to him multiple times. Just goes on to say that if you are backing your natural game, I mean, if you really apply yourself, I mean, that's somewhere you should actually do, irrespective of the fact what kind of it is. Obviously, it's just with players like Pant, it's gonna be high risk, high reward. Sometimes it would pay off, some more. The other times it won't. But I think it's safe to say that by the end of Pant's career, by the end that Pant hangs his boots, particularly in Test cricket, he would have won more matches with with the way, with his natural game, with the right kind of intent that he has, with the positivity, with that positive stroke play that he has, than the number of games that India would have lost because Pant played a rash shot or something. So I think y- players like Pant, you shouldn't really be giving them a template that okay, you should play like that, because if you look at it, players like Harry Brook, Rishabh Pant, Travis Head, obviously that name brings up a lot of memories for Indian team. But if you look at it, all the innings that Travis Head has played against India, Australia have been in a spot of bother. We were three down for 50 odd in the World Cup final. We were three down for 70, 80 odd in the World Test Championship final. What does he do? He comes out and plays his natural game, the attacking game. In the first 20, I think Alan Border mentioned it in the comms as well. The best time to get Travis Head is to get him in the first 20 deliveries, because if he crosses that mark, he's just gonna escalate from that point. It's gonna be gear 3, 4, 5, and with the speed that he operates, there's gonna be very little time from the point where he's playing in gear 4 to the point where he goes on to gear 6. And Pant is obviously one of those players, but there's been a lot of outside noise which is directing players like him. So obviously it's just gonna it's I mean, given the kind of cricketing culture that's there in India, obviously these sort of things do come to the players. They do hear these kind of things, and obviously it's going to wane on the way they play it as well. They play the game as well. So obviously you need to give the players that little bit of freedom, that okay, even if you fail, we're backing you, because we have that confidence in we have that confidence in you. Like I said, the more, I mean, we have that confidence in you. Like I said, that you would be winning us more number of games playing the way you do than the number of games that we would lose because of the way you played. So obviously, you have to instill that confidence in your players. As a captain, that should be your responsibility, which is something that Pat Cummins has very successfully did, which is something Ben Stokes has done with Harry Brook as well. So I think it's only fair that you give Pant that little bit of freedom. I think he has shown it time and again that he's not somebody who will just back down without a fight. He's got that temperament, he's got that resilience. It's just about giving him that little bit of freedom, that okay, we back you no matter what. And you could see the results that he had in limited overs, where he just took the attack to the opposition and he just went on to score big runs. I mean, even in the swinging conditions in England, I think he has 160 odd, a couple of hundreds to go with it. So obviously, when you back your players, when you give them that little bit of confidence that okay, we are backing you, they have that freedom to play the way they want to, and that's when you get the best of results out of them. I mean, being a captain, it's not about getting a player to perform in a certain manner. It's about giving your players the freedom so that you can get the best out of them. Sometimes with some players, it's like they need a rough template that okay, you're supposed to play this way. Players like Man, they are more into that liberal nature, that okay, we back you, we don't really have a set template for you. You go out and play the way you want to.
Yeah, I mean, India selectively does give the longer rope and that freedom to some players to just, play their natural game. With Rishabh Pant, I think it's just about, trusting the man to do his thing. But Rishabh, did you also quickly want to add something here?
Yeah, I mean, if I mean, let's not forget Rishabh Pant had a pivotal role in that Brisbane win not too long ago, and and he was going about it hammer and tongs, even though Indian fans were biting their nails, hoping and praying that okay, that the result goes in our favor. He was the one who took us over the line. So policing Rishabh Pant and with regards to his natural approach and his game, maybe not the wisest thing to do because Pant has been around for a bit, and I think he has that element of game temperament is there. Yes, there is this high risk, high reward approach that he goes about it, and that's his game. And at some level, yes, you could argue that okay, you need to understand the game situation. But the thing is, the way how Pant tackles that game situation and sort of combines it with the way how he goes about it not naturally is what makes him so fun to watch, and it's also one of the reasons why he is probably one of the first names in our team sheet. So, which is why watching Rishabh Pant's first things SCG test was kind of strange. You never the fact that he was blocking so much stuff that he would normally just he would really hit those for fours and sixes, clearly showing that yeah, that there's an element of policing that's going on behind the scenes, whether he's getting directions from the coaching staff or whether it's just outside noise just sort of meddling with his style of play, which is why it was such a almost joyous to watch him in that second innings where he got I think 60 out of 39 whatever 39 balls or whatever, because that seemed much more like it really. So I think with Rishabh Pant, maybe I guess what he could maybe address is at what point does he apply that natural game? Because I it's not because because he comes down at around 5 or 6. So then and with the current situation of our lineup, he's usually coming a little bit earlier than expected, given that our top order is a mess right now. So I think if we really get a top order in a better situation, it helps Rishabh Pant significantly. Otherwise, might as well bring him up the order where where he could potentially have a bit more to do, and he'll have the benefit of having other batters coming up next, so that might even help his natural game in that respect. But I'm not too worried about Rishabh Pant actually. That response from Sunil Gavaskar was way overboard. I mean, I guess maybe he has a right to be mad given that it is Border-Gavaskar Trophy. So, but then, but yeah, that was uncalled for in my opinion. As for Yashasvi, I think he's one of the few, or maybe the only top order batter we have who has come out with flying colors in this Border-Gavaskar Trophy. Someone who could be a pretty long mainstay for Team India for years to come. Someone who is looks very comfortable in that opening role. Someone who can take the new ball, take the attack to the bowlers. Um, should he have poked around with Mitchell Stark? Probably not. But then again, I don't mind that at some level. It's you're feeling on you're on top of your game, and you want to take it to folks who also are can be are on the top of the game. It's healthy competition, and sometimes you come on top, sometimes you don't. You learn from it and you move on. He's still 23, and if Yashasvi can do this, so can Sam Constas, so can the others, and it fosters it just makes things more competitive. It makes it more fun. So I'm not complaining about that at all. Um, so on one and maybe one day you might have the upper hand, the other day it might be someone else, and it's okay. So it's I have no problems with Yashasvi's approach. He definitely has a long way to go, but I'm glad that India has found a good left-handed batter on opening, and someone who can, take the bowlers to the cleaners, because he delivers. He converts his he converts his starts into big scores, and he does the and the best thing, he does that for all three formats. So I think which is an added bonus. So it's so cool to have seen that we have at least this aspect covered for the foreseeable future. It's just a matter of who now bats alongside him, which becomes the real question here. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Yashasvi definitely has to be one of the bigger positives that India can take from the series. And I know, guys, and to all our viewers who have been watching, we've discussed so far like the series at large, some aspects of the fifth test as well. But I'll also take a few comments because Ujjwal is like, Neha, please, check some of the earlier comments. There was one about Bumrah. Looking at Bumrah in this series was watching a disciplined class monitor managing a bunch of reckless classmates. I think this statement is validated with the way Bumrah spoke at the toss, right? In the fifth test. He's like, like the team is very united and Rohit Sharma did a very selfless thing and all of that. So it is actually a fair point. And he just clearly led from the front too, right? With the ball, the way he just single-handedly was challenging Australia was really nice to see. And the fact that he couldn't really be a part of India's, bowling in that last innings was probably one of the other reasons why Australia had it easy. But then even the target, right? It wasn't really that big of like mental challenge for Australia to surpass. So that's another aspect. Want to take one more comment as well. This one goes on to say that Nathan McSweeney must be feeling terrible looking at how the debut of Constance and Webster went about. Actually, this was in my pointers as well to just reflect on. So, Anshul, I'll start off with you on this one. You can probably talk about the Nathan McSweeney aspect, how he is not given the longer rope, considering there is an aging Usman Khwaja, yet the experience part kind of plays in his favor. But still, I think Australia will look at this duo as positives as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, from where I see, I don't think Nathan McSweeney must have been having that little bit of sad emotions. He must not be feeling terrible because obviously the day he was dropped from Boxing Day Test, he scored. I think he scored some 70, 80 odd for the Brisbane Heat. Just goes on to say that okay, I'm batting freely. I'm just not bothered about whether I'm picked or why I'm dropped. It just goes on to show that the management had a really clear conversation with him about why he was being dropped and why Sam Constas was being brought into the 11. And like you mentioned, it's a well-known fact that Ozzy is towards the fag end of his career. Then he's in the twilight phase of his career, basically. And I think Ujjwal mentioned as well that it might be the case that Australia might switch him ahead of the next WTC cycle because in the next WTC cycle, the first series that we're going to be playing is the Ashes at home. And you can't really be having two old blokes opening in the Ashes because it would be just like throwing a couple of youngsters to the dogs, to the wild dogs that the Pommies would be, because from the uh, from the kind of attack that I am seeing them prepare for the Ashes, it's just gonna be very hostile bowling from them with Archer added into the mix as well. So from where I see, I don't really think Uzi would be dropped following the WTC final at Lords. But at the same time, I think Constas and Nathan McSweeney, both of them would be kept in the loop. Both of them would be kept in the mix of things because obviously Uzi, like I said earlier, Uzi is in the twilight phase of his career. So who better equipped? Who is the other batter that has come through the domestic ranks and has succeeded in opening in Shield? Because for the past 5 to 7 years in Shield cricket, opening has not been easy. More often than not, players have I mean the number 3 4 batters have found themselves in the middle within their first 10 overs, and that has been the case with Nathan McSweeney as well. I mean, I think the first test that he opened, it was literally the first time he was opening in Test cricket, bearing that. Uh, in competitive cricket, obviously, uh, uh, because for South Australia, despite of being the skipper, he bats at number 3. But more often than not, in the last couple of seasons, he has found himself in the middle at number 3, which is virtually like an opening position because the ball is still very brand new. The ball is doing a lot, and particularly the kind of wickets that are dished out in the Shield cricket, they're very different from the ones that are dished out in international cricket because the Shield wickets have got a lot of grass to go with them. So, like I said, it just makes opening difficult because you've got the conditions. very highly inclined towards the bowlers. So obviously it's going to be difficult. And if you're coming through ranks and scoring bulk of runs, obviously it just goes on to show that you've got that kind of temperament, the skills required. And it was visible in the way Nathan McSweeney navigated the likes of Bumrah and Siraj under lights in our first day in Adelaide as well. I mean, it's a well-known fact that twilight phase and the phase under light is literally the toughest period to be batting in a day-night test. And Nathan McSweeney and Manas Labuschagne navigated that phase so easily. I mean, they applied themselves to a point where it looked like they have set up Australia for a good total in the first innings, which was also the case where they just came out earlier in the morning. Obviously, it was a shame that he could not really add to his total of 36, if I remember correctly. Uh, that again, no pun intended. Uh, that where he I mean, obviously it was a shame that he could not add it to it earlier in the morning, but obviously it just goes on to show that he has got that skill. Because Naman had mentioned earlier, Bumrah was the workhorse of Indian bowling this tour. And to navigate the spell of Bumrah under the toughest batting conditions in test cricket under lights against a swinging ping ball that is literally doing rounds, it just goes on to show that you have got that skill. Because I mean, again, it's just Preet Bumrah that we're talking about. So I think Nathan McSweeney has got that technique. He and the fact that he played with such freedom for Brisbane Heat, literally later the night that he was dropped, just goes on to show that there has been some clear communication between players, between the management and Nathan McSweeney himself, that why he is being dropped. And obviously, from where I see, I think he would definitely be kept in the mix of things. And with Ozzy being towards the fag end of his career, I think, long story short, from where I see things happening, Nathan McSweeney and Sam Constas look like the players that might open for Australia in the near future, if not far.
Bold prediction there, Anshul, and that clearly seems to be the case, because Australia would probably also be heading into this whole transitional phase, probably like more sooner than later, probably a little later. Not compared to India at least, but
Uh-huh.
just let's talk about Bo Webster, right? I mean, the man really scored all those crucial runs, took catches, took wickets. Such an important moment for him in his career, because there are like so many all-rounders that Australia can rely on. I mean, Mitch Marsh was criticized heavily in the tour. They felt, he was just like a specialist fielder, didn't do anything with the bat or ball. Then you also have Cam Green, who is someone who will really fight for that spot. But just talk to us about Bo Webster and all the positives that he would take.
I think the case with Bo Webster is similar to how it is with Scott Boland. Has put in a lot of hard yards over the years in domestic circuit. From if I'm not very good with remembering numbers, but from if I remember it correctly, Bo Webster has been the most successful all rounder, most successful batter batting at number 5-6 positions in domestic circuit for the past couple of years. He's also picked. He has also got this knack of picking wickets at crucial times. If I remember correctly, his average for over the last couple of seasons in Shield cricket is somewhere around about 25-ish, which is literally something that you expect from your frontline bowlers. That just goes on to show that he's familiar. And it looked in the way he played in Sydney as well. He did not look out of sorts at any point in time. It just felt like he is at home. He felt at home. It did not look like an uncharted territory for him, to say the least. He was very confident in his stroke making. He was defending the ball well. He was respecting the good deliveries, but at the same time capitalizing on the loose ones. So obviously it just goes on to show that the hard yards that you put in domestic circuit, it just goes on to transition when you move up the ranks in international cricket as well. As far as the state of all rounders in Australia is concerned, I think I've never really seen a better guy than Mitchell Marsh, because I've seen a lot of videos of people. I mean, I've seen a lot of videos that people have shared with me where Mitchell Marsh has been very openly and very warmly greeting Bo Webster's family, Bo Webster himself. I mean, even in this wild celebrations that I saw after we after the presentations, Mitchell Marsh was the first person to hug Bo Webster and just say that good on you, mate. I mean, it just goes on to show the kind of character he is, given the fact that Bo Webster replaced Mitchell Marsh in this test. So obviously, and like you rightly mentioned, Cam Green, I felt halfway through the series that we are actually missing the services of Cam Green, because obviously had he been into the squad, I wouldn't have expected Pat or Mitch Stark to bowl the number of overs that they had bowled, because obviously Boland is something that came into the squad for being one of the dark horse who could actually toil through the sessions. But from where I see, Cam Green is one of the vital cog in this Australian lineup. So obviously, it's going to be a problem of plenty for Australia once Cam Green is fit, as to who they pick. But I think as far as the state of all rounders is concerned in Australian cricket, I think it's moving in a very promising direction.
Fair point there, Anshul. And I'll also take this comment by Ujjwal directed to Rishabh. Now, Constance was required just to rattle India and Bumrah. Khwaja couldn't be dropped considering his experience. So, Rishabh, just talk to us about this whole Constance thing. I think after the day's play, you could see, the whole Bumrah giving that stare of that look to Constance. And then a lot of people feeling, okay, he's just a 19-year-old, don't go after him and all of that. But then there's the other side of the argument that if you are doing certain things, you will receive it back, and you should, find a way to move on with life and all that. But yes, your thoughts on Sam Constance and the attitude he just brings to the table?
I love it. I mean, give me more of it. I mean, I think this is you need a little bit of a little bit of drama and action within the ground, because I mean the way it ought to be seen. 11 22 10 22 people in that ground. Doesn't matter if you're 19 or if you're 39. You're still in you share the same space, and you've earned that space. And it's perfectly fair if you go at someone or something for something or the other. But obviously there's a line you don't cross. But I saw no problems with that, and I saw no problems with Constance trying to egg on Jasprit Bumrah, and I saw no problems when India took his wicket and celebrated on his face. Tit for tat works perfectly fine. So I don't think I have no problems with that at all. But yeah, very impressed by how he went about his business. Very, very promising for Australia. I think they've unearthed a really cool talent here, that too at a young age. Maybe uh, you know who knows, maybe next year an IPL contract. But if that is a marker of development, but I don't know. But I'm really excited to see what he does in the white ball format as well. I have to be honest, haven't seen a lot of him. This is probably my first sort of viewing of Sam Constas, so probably Anshul can offer a lot more here. But from what I see, the guy has really good technique, really solid, really sound, and at the same time is gutsy. I mean, if you're gonna if you're going to play the paddle sweep off of Jasprit Bumrah, means you've got that takes guts. That takes guts seriously. So yeah, I think, in fact, I thought that day he was a bit unlucky that he missed out on his century, because he was really looking set for that. So I think I have. So I'm really excited to see where Sam Constance goes from here on. I hope he can, if he's, and although I wasn't a big fan of what Andrew McDonald said, that they need to protect him from this kind of attitude. He doesn't need protection. He's fine. He tried to rattle just for Bumrah, and he got a perfectly appropriate response on the other side. So I don't think I have. So I there's no need to coddle these players here. You've made it into the big stages. Maybe if they go overboard, you might need to just talk to them and tell them that, hey, be careful. But otherwise, I think it's healthy. I think it's competitive, and sometimes it's needed almost, because even that shoulder barge, I mean, it's a little dramatic and a little played for cameras. What happened with the Constance and Virat Kohli, but I actually did not have. I mean, I didn't see it as a huge deal. In fact, I thought that Kohli probably could have backed off from it a little bit. But hey, listen, it's what as viewers we enjoy, because it just adds a lot of spice to what we're already seeing. We're seeing such two cool, such amazing teams are going at it hammer and tongs, and on top of that, some things flare up, why not give us more?
Okay, firstly, there were a lot of things wrong with what you said, Rishabh. But starting with, let's just put a pin into the IPL contract thing for now. IPL is still 4 weeks, 4 months away, pardon me. So let's just put a pin on that and maybe we can circle back to it if I am available at that time, because obviously I know you would be for sure. So let's just put a pin on it for now. As far as the thing you said about Ronnie being displaced at Sam Constas being harassed. I mean, you did not obviously use that word, but you went on to say that he was not in the right spirits. So, what the problem Ronnie had with it is he did not really question anything against the Indian team. He did not question their intent. What he just said was at the end of the play, he just made sure that his players are in the right set of minds, because obviously the dismissed batter was Usman Khwaja, not Sam Constas, and he was still supposed to resume his innings the very next day. And from where I see, a coach is actually like a father of a family, and where the players are his children. So obviously, when you see the opponent attacking like wild dogs to one of your children, you obviously go and check on them as to whether or not they are in the right states of mind, and that's exactly what Ronnie did. That okay, are you whatever happened over there has happened, you just focus on resuming your innings the next day. And that's all the conversation that Ronnie had with him. So I don't really see where are you coming from in terms of the point that you mentioned about Andrew McDonald questioning India. The one thing that he did talk about is the fact that all 11 players of India, as soon as KL Rahul picked he held on to that catch, all 11 players of India circled Sam Constas. He's literally 19 years old. And obviously, he's one of those tough lads who doesn't shy away from a fight. But 11 players circling one guy who is literally headed towards the dressing room, where one certain lad, I would not call names, he literally took a semicircle out of the I mean, against the direction of his motion, just to come in his face and shout a few words, including the F word. Come on, man. Come on. You haven't dismissed Sam Constas, have you? He literally smashed your best bowler when you were trying to take advantage of, like, literally the best bowling conditions that Melbourne had to offer. He literally smashed your best bowler on debut. Never before in the series there a batter. If I remember the stat correctly, never has Jasprit Bumrah been scored. So he has leaked so many runs against a particular batter in his very first spell of a Test match. Who does it? Sam Constas, a 19-year-old. So obviously there's going to be frustration from the Indian camp that okay, how how a 19-year-old is rattling. I mean, how he's taking the attack to against one of our best batters. But then again, there's a certain line between aggression and trying to play dominatrix. What Andrew McDonald was not good with was the fact that all 11 players climbed like wild dogs onto him. I mean, obviously, as Australians, we are not really familiar. We are very familiar with the banter and the kind of heated arguments that happen on field. But there's a certain line between targeting just one player by all 11 players and intimidating a player. Obviously, targeting somebody, the mental disintegration part of it, the sledging, it's all good and fine. But trying to intimidate a player who is literally in his first or second test, and come on, man, not cool. And from where I see that shoulder budge, the Kaki Surabada Virat Kohli incident is it's very well known. For a certain for a reaction that was probably around the same lines as what Virat Kohli did to Sam Constas, he was handed a ban for one match, for one bloody match. A lot of experts have come out to say that had there been any other player than Virat Kohli to shoulder budge Sam Constas, would have been banned for one match at least, and there would have been a disciplinary action as well. But like I say, it's the superstar culture of India. You can't really be banning. At this point of time, let's just be honest, ICC is not as powerful as BCCI. So at no point of time they can be banning one of BCCI's biggest players. Despite of the kind of form that he must be in, it just not does justify the reaction that was there. The shoulder budge, it was completely out of sorts. And yeah, I'm up for that kind of a banter, but as long as it does not turn physical. I mean, you must have seen the graphic as well. Kohli literally crossed an entire pitch to have that shoulder budge with Sam Constas, who was not even looking in that direction. He was actually checking his gloves. I mean, how am I supposed? I've not. I mean, nobody has got their eyes on their hair, do they? Nobody has got their eyes on their head. It's literally over here. If I'm looking down, how am I supposed to know that who is coming in the opposite direction towards me, and who is literally changing their direction just to budge into me? How am I supposed to know that? Obviously, I'm not. So, what I think the point that I'm trying to say is there's this very slight line between being aggressive and being over the line, being against the right thing. The intimidating thing that had happened with Sam Constas on the last ball, I think that was intimidating. That was over the line. Sure, you get into a player's face. What Bumrah did was absolutely right. What Prasidh Krishna did, shouted in Sam Constas' face, that was absolutely right. What Kohli did, you literally took a semicircle. You literally were on the slip side of a wicket. You came to the leg side of the wicket, and then you got into the face of that youngster before you went. You did not even acknowledge your bowler. You first sledged the opponent. You took that entire like 10 to a second run, and then you acknowledged your bowler after shouting at the opponent that fuck you. Come on, man. If this is not intimidation, then what is it? What is it?
Yeah, about that, I think there were certain elements when did this series with Virat Kohli. I think what I was also reminded when you were speaking, where he was making a sandpaper reference
Yeah.
in that Sydney at the Sydney Test, where yeah, definitely it's obviously trying to kind of rile up the opposition because clearly you're in the other India was in a position of weakness there. I think where I guess at some level I mean, from a viewing standpoint, yeah, you like an element there is, like you said, the fine line between when it's aggressive, but in a way that is not, it's not going too far, versus where you're literally you're trying to be a problem for the other team. I think that there is a thin line there. The shoulder barge wasn't something I was wholly a fan of, but I think at the same time, um, I probably did not see a whole lot of malicious intent, but other than just being intimidating. But again, it also probably came from a place of weakness. Um, so maybe something for and you were right to mention the Kagiso Rabada incident, which was clearly ugly and completely out of line. And I think, yeah, I mean, mm, whe- whether I think I guess at some whether Virat Kohli needed a one match ban for that, or a match fine is something for the ICC to decide. What it definitely did is it kind of also showed that even for senior folks, I mean, Virat Kohli he is one of the senior most guys in the team. The fact that they can also they that the fact that if someone like Sam Constas can get under their skin, um, kind of says something, because whether this aspect of Kohli, I probably think is something that he could probably work on. Uh, because if I recall, even before, it's not that he's not done it before. He's done it quite frequently, in fact. But I think coming from a place of weakness like this, and I think now that he is the senior, where I guess you probably need to sort of, there need to be a little bit more measure, because what this does is, because if Virat Kohli is doing it, there are other guys around him. Clearly, they will see that, oh, if Kohli is doing it, I might as well do it as well, and it's fine because Kohli did it. So it's so that is definitely a problem. So yeah, I think. And also, one more thing to add is that Kohli's form himself has not been great i- in this series. So it could be maybe an outpouring of that frustration towards this whole matter. So yeah, was a tiny bit of ugliness, but as far as I'm concerned, I enjoyed watching it, and it was at least the degree, to the extent where um, players were really going at it from that perspective, maybe making it a little bit more personal than needed. But I guess, but I think, and maybe tiny bits of that is okay, and at some levels even fine. It makes like I said, makes things better from a viewing standpoint. But yeah, something for Kohli to really consider. Like, why is he getting so riled up by someone who's just making their debut?
Yeah, guys, I
So
mean,
like
thank you so much.
so like you just said, like to put everything into context, the way you began your response, what you said that you did not find anything unusual over there. So I mean, it did not misalign with the code of conduct. So what you're trying to say is it's perfectly fine for a player to cross an entire length of a pitch, sorry, width of a pitch, to have physical contact with an opponent if you have got 16,000 runs behind your back, sorry, 26,000 runs behind your back.
Yeah, like I said, I mean,
That's
it
not
was
justified. That's really not justified. The rules should be same for everybody. If
I,
Kagiso Rabada was banned over there and his actions were termed as unjustified and unwarranted, so should be Kohli's. Why just one demerit point? And come on, man, you are literally a legend of the game. Before that point, Kohli was actually praised by all of Australia for the kind of player he is. But since then, you must have noticed every time he has come out to bat, every time he has gone to the boundary for fielding, he's been booed left, right, and center. I mean, obviously, for somebody like Kohli, it may or may not matter, but to lose respect from the same crowd who used to cherish you that, okay, Virat Kohli is coming to Australian shores to play Test cricket. It just tarnishes the image, tarnishes the reputation that you have earned for so long.
for sure. I
Yeah,
mean, I was yeah, just once. Sorry, Neha. It was just that it was also one more. It was a heat in the moment, but again, doesn't justify Virat Kohli here, because I think, yeah, because I think at the end of the day, it's like I said, it is a lot of frustration coming to the fore, and if, but still that doesn't absolve what also happened. I think maybe at some level, if the rules, like Anshul, you said, if there could be, like what happened with Kagiso Rabada versus what happened with Sam Constas, if Virat Kohli deserved a little bit more, again, not in a position to really say, but yeah, definitely a certain, I think, a relook at some of the rules and how they're implemented, and against whom they are implemented, which also need to be taken into consideration from the governing body. Yes, there is this argument that ICC kind of is a little bit soft against India, but in whether it was in this context and in other contexts, but yeah, definitely an ugliest aspect to what we saw this series, for sure.
yeah, I
Sorry,
mean,
Neha.
this is no worries. But I think this is one occasion where there's no black and white, and it was a situation where we probably expected a little better from Virat Kohli, being the senior player and all of that. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for actually bringing in your perspectives. And I realized we're almost going to be touching the 2 hour mark. It's been such a fun chat. But almost as we reach the end of our discussion, I'll just get your final thoughts. To Rishabh, and obviously direct this question of your positives for India from the series. Where do they look, going ahead? Because the World Test Championship cycle, and the final is gone, but you still have the next cycle and so much to work on. So yeah, what should India's strategy be?
We are in the transition phase, aren't we? And I think we need to keep finding ways for allowing newer talent, cooler talent to enter our four. There is so much talent that we have. We have literally 3 or 4 options for each spot in that Indian team, and so I think our next series is against England, and I think focus now has to turn to that. Obviously, you need some forensics that need to be looked at with what's happening with Team India. I think definitely top order is an area of concern. It's actually an area of concern for red ball and white ball cricket, really. So there was this. I saw this argument that should we go back to having different coaches for different formats, like what England had done for Brendan McCullum and Matthew Mott. They were successful with it to some degree, but I don't know how effective that might be with this current lineup. Because like Gautam Gambhir's record ever since he's become Indian coach has not been good enough. Um, I really want to see again, like we discussed, the fact that we really need. I think from fast bowling perspective, we cannot, like this series. The biggest positive wasn't like, I mean, how where do we start with Jasprit Bumrah, right? Like where there it literally at one point became Bumrah versus Australia because of just how almost had the number of almost every Australian batter that whenever he would go on spells with, to the extent that, like I think was mentioned in this conversation, he was overused. I mean, in that fourth test, the guy bowled more than 20 overs, and by the end of it, the guy was stiff. He was like holding his I think his hamstring by the end of it, and you felt really sad because all of us, even in the group, we were like, please just give Bumrah a rest because we want him fit and firing for the Champions Trophy. So it's we and the same goes for even Mohammad Siraj, who also looked quite really cooked by the final test as well. We really need to do something about our workload management of our players, and we probably need to incorporate more squad rotation, um, across formats and even in the same format maybe. For example, how Australia almost had a perfect replacement for Josh Hazelwood in Scott Boland, and it was really, and the way how Bo Webster just kind of came into this Australian setup and fit in perfectly. So I think that's something that we need to sort of look out for. Really want to see more of Dhruv Jurel in this team. I think his time is nearly there, if not just there yet. Really want to see him. Uh, yeah, Anshul, you're correct. It was his calf, not hamstring. Sorry. So it was. I really feel, but yeah, going back, workload management, especially of our faster bowlers, is going to be an area of concern. Really want to see. I want to see this team incorporate more all rounders. I mean, the fact that Nitish Kumar Reddy, we saw more of his contributions with the bat. He's a handy bowler, but he didn't bowl that much. Was it? Did Rohit Sharma not trust his bowling that much, or was he overly relying on someone like Bumrah and Siraj, and whether it was Prasidh Krishna, Akashdeep, or Harshit Rana, don't know. That being said, I want to see more of them. Um, I I think this new generation of Indian bowling, we have to sort of start looking for alternatives for even someone like a Jasprit Bumrah. Um, we need to sort of, we the trio that we mentioned earlier, Akshar, Ashwin, and Jadeja. Now, mind you, those three are such handy players with bat and ball, and we need to start looking at players like that. I've always been an advocate for all rounders. The more you have in a team, the better, almost. But it's it's going to be tricky for us going forward. I think obviously Champions Trophy is priority, and my expectation is that Rohit Sharma will continue on for that. I hope that he gets a good send off that way, but that by winning it, of course. But that being said, there are gonna there needs to be serious questions about this team that need to be asked in terms of how we want to set up for different formats. Because now, if you're going to see us perform in the T20 game and all of a sudden we start performing well, then questions are like, okay, fine, then what's going wrong with red ball then? So it's going. You need to, I think, look at it that this from a it's a layered perspective that's going on here. And it's very it's tricky times. There are questions about the coaching staff that Gautam Gambhir has at his hand as well, whether they are as effective or whether they are no good, because this is a very talented you know set of players that we have. These are folks who if they play for their respective states in Ranji or VHT or SMAT, they play really really well for their various IPL franchises. They deliver. And so I think we need to find ways for them to click, and they can, absolutely they can. I think it's we definitely need to find ways for our dressing room to get back in order. Yeah, and I think a little bit more structure would be good. There are set. I think top priority will be our top order and our pace bowling department. With that, those are probably what I flag as high priority at the minute. Um, but yeah, slightly concerning scenes for the rest of the year. I hope we recover. Um, but yeah, all eyes now, for at least as far as I'm concerned, given that WTC is out of the picture, is for the Champions Trophy.
Yeah, Rishabh, thank you so much for that. And I'll direct this one to Anshul about Australia, what they will be looking forward to, positives they can take from here. And also this one question that Ujjwal asked about the WTC final. So if you could just cumulatively answer that, yeah.
I think first thing, Rishabh, I would like to tell you that you can't really be having a team of. I mean, it's good that you advocate all rounders, but you can't really be having 11 all rounders in the wides. I mean, obviously, it's not T20 cricket, right? So you can't really be having that, or neither is this franchisee cricket. So you can't really be having 11 all rounders. You need to have the specialist batters, bowlers. Obviously, a couple of all rounders here and there is absolutely fine, but you can't really be having a plethora of all rounders. You definitely need those specialists here and there everywhere. Speaking of India's positives, I think the biggest positive that India should take out of this series is the fact that only India have Jasprit Bumrah. And the biggest negative point that I mean, that India should take out of it is this series is that they only have Jasprit Bumrah. Because if you look at the Indian bowling, it's Bumrah, and then there is literally nobody. There's darkness. I mean, can you name any bowler who can give you those breakthrough spells? I don't really think so. I mean, I don't really think there is.
I think the closest that was Prasid Krishna today, with the way
Exactly.
he
I
was
mean,
bowling, but brought in
yeah,
so late in the series. Yeah.
exactly. Prasidh Krishna, and even he looked wayward. He struggled to control that new ball. I think Australia were 3 for 30. I mean, none for 35 in the very first 3 overs, chasing 160 odd. I mean, that just goes on to show that Bumrah was the difference between my predictions getting correct. Bumrah and the record breaking series he had, let me frame it that way. Bumrah and the record breaking series he had was the difference between the predictions that I made prior to the series and the actual outcome of that series. Because without Bumrah's spell in Australia's first inning at Perth, the scoreline would comfortably had been 4-0. Who's to say it could have been 5-0 had Brisbane, panned out the way Adelaide did, a result in 3 days. So, I mean, obviously, like I said, the positive that India must have taken out from this series that they're the only team that has Jasprit Bumrah, but the biggest negative as well that they only have Jasprit Bumrah. As far as the batting department is concerned, I think I'd be just iterating the points that I have been saying for a long time now. India need a strong retrospect into the top order. I mean, you can't really be asking your your middle order, or your tailenders to save your faces every now and then. I mean, once in a while is a different thing, but to be relying on them to get you to a comfortable score. I mean, I had this conversation with one of my friends, and he went on to say that from breaching Fortress Gaba, to avoiding a follow-on at Gaba. We've come a really long way. Indian cricket has come a really long way, and obviously not in the right direction. So it just goes on to say the state of affairs that India has recently. It's just about acknowledging these problems. And as far as the future is concerned, certainly Jaiswal, like I had rightly anticipated, would be one to look forward for the future, because I expected him to have the kind of series that he had. As far as NKR Nitish Kumar Reddy is concerned, he did have a good outing in Melbourne. But if you look at his domestic performances, he's somebody who's a bowling all rounder. He's more known for his bowling than his batting. But the fact that he was roped in was because of the exploits he had in IPL. Just goes on to say how heavily Indian cricket is reliant on IPL. I mean, it's one thing to mix formats, but it's at the same time you need to ensure that the kind of guys that you are playing, they have to be specialist. Ajinkya Rahane played after the Adelaide debacle of 36 all out. Ajinkya Rahane played with just 6 batters, specialist batters, and 5 specialist bowlers at the MCG. And he went on to beat Australia at the G. That just goes on to say that there is still a place of specialist players, and not a place, and it's just not all about all rounders in test cricket. You can't like I said, you can't really be having 11 all rounders. And as far as as far as red ball format is concerned, I mean, it's like I said, it's not T20. You can't really be having that kind of a combination, because one way or the other it's just going to bite you. It's just going to cost you big time. As far as the positives for Australia is concerned, I think the future does look bright as far as the opening is concerned, because post David Warner's retirement, the biggest question was, with the fact that Usman Khwaja is also coming to the end of his career, who replaces both of them? Because David Warner has been in the mix of things. I mean, throughout the 2010s, if we talk about openers who have consistently performed well in the test format, I think we can count them on fingertips. David Warner, uh, Alistair Cook, Dimut Karunaratne to a certain extent. There was Craig Brathwaite as well for a brief period of time, but then he had that obvious decline because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's West Indies cricket and it's all in tatters. But like I said, we can literally count them on fingertips. So this was a big question as to who replaces David Warner, and then who takes Usman Khwaja's place when he decides to hang his boots. I think in McSweeney and Constas, we have got a couple of really good candidates. I think Constas may be a little bit raw yet, because obviously, from what I have seen of him in domestic cricket, he's more of a traditional player. So by the looks of it, the way he tackled Bumrah, it looked more like a strategy, particularly tailored for to navigate Jasprit Bumrah, and not the way he actually plays. So I think that is the biggest positive, that he can switch between his natural game and a tailored template just to unsettle or just to get a particular bowler off their legs. And it happened. Jasprit Bumrah was the best bowler until that opening spell in Melbourne. I think he conceded some 40, 50 runs in his very first spell. Before that, he was having a dream series. It just goes on to show that Sam Contrast is somebody who can switch between his traditional game and at the same time can play that uh, provided template as well, just for a particular period of time in order to navigate a certain set of bowlers. So that just goes on to say that the Australian opening, which was one of my biggest concerns heading into this series, I think that's really good, and I think in a really good place. And I think it's only time that we people stop saying that Scott Boland is a first change bowler for Australia. I think he's one of those bowlers who is very capable of playing as a frontline bowler, even when none of the bowlers are injured. I mean, even when a bowler requires a rotation, I think Scott Boland is more than capable to replace that bowler and feature as a frontline bowler. I think those were the two big advantage. Those were the two big pointers that I found from this series. As far as the negatives are concerned, I think the form of Mitchell Marsh, because once Cameron Green is back, There are going to be three people vying for two spots. Just goes on to show the state of affairs of all rounders, because for a long period of time following Shane Watson's retirement, Australia have never found an answer to Shane Watson. Who replaces Shane Watson? There was not one candidate, but now we have three viable candidates who are who can come into the side and perform. Mitchell Marsh was literally the Allen Border medalist the previous year for his exploits in Test cricket, particularly. At the same time, if you look at somebody like Cam Green, I mean, he's once in a generation talent. I mean, somebody who can literally play as a frontline bowler and at the same time feature as a frontline batter as well. The one name that comes into my mind when I talk about that particular phrase is Jack Callis. Obviously, Cam Green is not at that point, obviously not, but he is somebody who, if kept rising the ranks, he can certainly, even if he achieves 10% of what Callis did, I think Australian cricket would be in a really good shape. And what to say about Bo Webster? Like I said, the hard yards that you put into domestic circuit, they pay off sooner than later. So I think those are the biggest positives and the negatives that I find from this series.
Yeah, I mean, I think so far in our 2 hour discussion, we have comprehensively looked at all aspects, right, from an Indian POV and Aussie POV. And I think this last comment, of the World Test Championship finalists, where South Africa and Australia both have won their last test at Lord's, it's definitely an exciting encounter. I think the Indian fans are supporting a certain green team, but Australia is again one team you just can't hate, and they are going in with that advantage. But yeah, Anshul and Rishabh, again, just I promise the last thing, quick thoughts on the World Test Championship finals, and we'll wrap up.
Rishabh, you would like to go first? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, for sure. Also, just want to clarify that one thing, maybe about the all-rounders bit that I mentioned. I think, yeah, definitely agree. We need specialist batters and bowlers. Maybe could have phrased it a little better, but I think the point I was trying to make is when you have that sort of space for more all-rounders, you have more options really from a batting and bowling standpoint. So maybe that was where I was coming. But yeah, agree to your point as well, Anshul. But yeah, about WTC final, it was so inspiring and cool to see South Africa, when they
Just
were playing
naked.
against Pakistan, when the way how they went about their business there. I know there were all sorts of questions about the scheduling that South Africa had
Yeah.
compared to what Australia and India had to go through. Apparently, it was easier according to some folks, but listen, that's not something that's not in their control. They faced whatever opponent they had to, and wherever they did, they were comprehensive. And this South Africa team under Temba Babuma's leadership has done great jobs. Has done a great job, I would say. And I mean, just the last Test match, Ryan Rickerton apparently scoring
Score a
I think
double ton.
250 or 260. I mean, yes, granted, Pakistan's bowling it's nowhere. It's absolutely nowhere. But it's but then again, that watching that performance, it's a team it's a cohesive unit, and that's an achievement in and of itself, considering where cricket South Africa is at the moment and the kind of
Well,
difficulties they've had to face. The fact that they had to prioritize their T20 league just so that they can have enough revenue to carry on,
yeah,
and so which again addresses the big sort of divide between the big three and the other cricketing
exactly.
sort of bodies out there. So, and South Africa has always been this so close yet so far team for so many years. And I mean, literally last year, how they were so close to winning the T20 World Cup, and which again India might have gone the and how close did Heinrich Klaassen nearly got them over the line up until Jasprit Bumrah's two overs and that final over from Hardik Pandya. But coming back to this, I think South Africa go into this as the underdogs. Yes, given that Australia they're on the upward swing, absolutely. But South Africa have good momentum on their side. There is a very
That's
good
true.
team spirit that's running between them, and I think some of their key players are also coming in good form. I would like to see a little bit more from the South African bowling per se. I think Andik Nokia is still injured. So
देखना
once
पड़ेगा.
yeah, so I think if he comes back, it can become interesting because he's obviously one of their key key bowlers alongside Lungi Ngidi and Kagiso Rabada. So I think you so definitely that's one aspect. But I am excited for the I mean WTC final. I guess I you really want to see South Africa lift an ICC trophy. It's been far
Yeah,
too long, and they're far too good
men's,
for
women's.
to not have an ICC trophy. That being said, Australia will not make anything easy for them. Australia literally
They
have all their
would.
bases covered. It's a problem of plenty for Australia, and I think for Australia probably it's going to be a question of if they can if their setup is good enough for the conditions in England. Same goes for South Africa as well. Um, so it's going to be a chess game, and I think it'll have its own twists and turns. I just hope it's not a one-sided contest
Yeah, yeah, that's
from
true.
a viewing standpoint. And but and although I kind of feel like Australia probably is the better team in all departments and might take this one, but I think South Africa are in a good place right now, and let's see if they can find that for the final, and if it helps
Inspiration.
them take it home. If it helps them take it home. Sorry, Anshul. Just it's just that it's an exciting time period. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem, Rishabh. I think I saw one of the comments that said that it's going to be a battle of pacers at Lords. So one thing people need to really understand that when there are two teams with very potent bowling attacks, it's not actually the battle of bowlers. It's actually the battle of batters. Which particular batting unit can navigate the opponent better? Because obviously both bowling units are actually very potent to run through the batting orders. But which batting order shows that little bit of resilience, that bit of temperament is the one that decides that which side would come out triumphant, because bowlers are going to do their job. Bowlers are more than capable enough. If you talk about a bowling heavy side, uh, uh, bowling on a green top, two bowling heavy sides battling it out on a green top, obviously it's going to be a lot of help for the pacers. The side that would win that game would actually be the one who bats better. So whenever the conditions are in the favor of bowlers, it's actually a battle of batters, and vice versa, obviously. So I think at Lords, it's not going to be that case, because as far as South African batting is concerned, it's a little bit short on experience, because there have been a quite few new guys around the corner. But having said that, South African bowling makes up for it. But if you talk about the Australian batting, they're low on confidence. Let's be honest. The boys are low on confidence, because for a very long period, just a few couple of guys have been performing. And let's be honest, Manas Labuschagne and Steve Smith are due big knocks. They're due big knocks. I mean, for Steve Smith, I at least not include him here, because he did look really good, particularly after he got the monkey off his back at the Gaba. But Manas Labuschagne is due big time. So I think more than the bowlers, it's going to be the battle of batters at the Lords, and whichever batting unit performs better compared to the other, it's going to come out triumphant. So at the same time, I can't really be putting one team at advantage, because Australia are low on confidence as far as their batting unit is concerned. And if we talk about South Africa, they've got a couple of new blokes who haven't really been in situations of such big occasions. I mean, if you talk about South Africa, we call them that they bottle knockout games, merely because of the fact that they haven't found themselves in those situations more often. So obviously, this is going to be this is the monkey that's going to be on their back. So obviously, as far as both batting units are concerned, they've got their chinks in their armors. As far as the bowling unit are concerned, both bowling units are more than potent to capitalize on any kind of help that's there on the offer. So more than bowlers, I think it's going to be the battle of batters. Having said that, I think David Bendingham, particularly, I saw one of the comments, one of the guys mentioned that David Bendingham is going to be really crucial for South Africa. I think he's one of those guys who is equivalent of Travis Head for South Africa, because what Travis Head does for Australia is he takes the attack to the opposition in that middle order. He does not let the first change, second change bowlers settle. He makes them come for their second spell, third spell, fourth spell. We saw it with India as well. He made Jasprit Bumrah come for his eighth spell in a day. Eighth spell. I mean, even if you're talking about on an average 3 overs in one spell, that still makes it 24 overs in a day. That's a lot of miles in a bowler's legs. So obviously, David Bedingham is going to be one of the guys who would be very crucial for South Africa's batting exploits in that final. Having said that, I think the first thing that we need to understand is maybe the final may not happen at Lords, because for the last couple of cycles they have said that it's going to be at Lords. First they switched it to Southampton, then they changed it to the Oval for the second cycle. For the third cycle, who's to say, they might actually switch it to some place Edgbaston or something, because obviously Edgbaston is one place where Australians can find hostility. But again, from the events of Lords 2023, I think Lords could also be another place that could be hostile for the Australians, following all the drama that surrounded around the members' room, the long room. So I think it's going to be the battle of batting units more than the bowling units, and whichever team performs better is going to come out triumphant. So I'm just not going to put a word to it yet.
I think either case, we're in for a very exciting WTC final. I think I speak for a lot of Indian fans. We will be watching it with obviously one tear in our eye, but with less BP because it's not our team that's in the final. But all the best to you, Anshul, because Australia has the chance to do something incredibly special. And I mean, the underdog in us would want to, root for South Africa because they've been at the receiving end of a lot of ICC tournaments not going there with the men's team and the women's team. So yeah, we'll keep our eyes peeled out.
Well, if it's
Nonetheless,
so much about South Africa winning an ICC title, then India should have bottled that World T20 final. But then again, it is what it is.
And Ujjwal wants us to take this last comment because he's been such a integral part of this conversation. Let's actually take this. He goes on to say the England tour in June is a battle of generations. Kohli versus Root. Not sure about Kohli. Brook versus Gill. Jaiswal versus Bethel. Really nice to see these names and these. I wouldn't say matchups, but interesting names that could possibly, give us a lot of reason to chat about. But yeah, well, the England tour is happening like much later. Right now, we're just focusing on the BGT, and I think we've spoken a lot. And yeah, guys, first up, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining me on the podcast. The 2 hours honestly didn't feel like 2 hours because, yeah, it was a really fun chat. You guys had lovely insights. And Naman, if you're still watching us, I think it's impossible because he's literally on a flight.
Okay.
That's not happening, but he will catch on this later. Thank you so much for that. And to all our viewers, man, like we had really nice comments coming in. So many people staying through the whole course of this discussion. So thank you so much for that. The plan is to do a lot of live shows like this. And this is the 50th stream. So yay, it's like historic because I think this is the longest also. And we've almost, gone on to Jan 6th. We're already in the next day and it's a busy Monday, I suppose, for Rishabh and Anshul, but they braved it and they sat through the whole thing. So thank you so much, guys. And yeah, that's all for now. Take care, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.